can't hear you. All right. And just to let you know, we are being recorded. It's a hybrid session, which is streamed on YouTube and also in person.
Good evening. It is Monday, October 17th, 2022. This is a meeting of the Southborough Planning Board. And as Karina just mentioned, we are being recorded. You can find the Zoom to participate remotely or YouTube Live on the town website under remote meetings. Planning Board is now in session. And the first item on the agenda is 250 Turnpike Road. Karina, you want to bring us up to date?
Sure. So the last public hearing was on September 26th, which was continued to this evening via an extension request that was granted to extend the action deadline of the planning board to October 21st. In the interim, we received on October 13th a letter from an attorney representing abutters, Attorney St. Andre, with requesting from the planning board clarification on the A&R that was previously endorsed in May of this year. Also, we received an extension request from the applicant, FD 250 Turnpike Road LLC, to continue to November 7th with action deadline decision to be reached by November 11th. I had a brief conversation with Mr. Ferris and his attorney, Brian Chaville, on Friday to discuss the planning board's concerns that the public hearings were being continued continuously without attendance. And we discussed a few options, and tonight the applicant is here to let the planning board know the status of where they're at and how they would wish to proceed, and ask the planning board if they would also agree to go in that direction. So that's where we are.
Good evening, gentlemen. If you'd like to come up to the front and center.
This is a matter of procedure. I wanted to make sure that the public hearing was reopened. If that's all right.
Yeah. Say it on the name of public hearing. Did we not say that? Did the chair not say that? We didn't?
I'm not sure. I don't think
Yeah,
So
like John used to say, we're opening.
opening the public hearing on 250 Turnpike.
Great. Good evening, board members. Again, I'm Brian Charvel, attorney representing the applicant before you. The applicant's FD 250 Turnpike LLC. And their principal is David Ferris, my client, who's sitting right to my right. So thanks for having us again. Where we are is we're ready for you to proceed with the plan that you've been looking at for a few weeks. We had submitted a plan, I think it was in July, and the first hearing was at the end of August. And we made our presentation about what we had envisioned for the self-storage of 250 Turnpike within the existing building. And based on feedback that you guys and Fuss and O'Neill had after that first hearing in late August, we had our engineer, James Tatro, with Azimuth Plan Design, to make some changes. And a revised site plan was submitted to you on August 31st. And that's what we're asking for you to proceed with tonight. In the time since August 31st, as Karina said, Fuss and O'Neill has given further feedback, which I would call mainly issue spotting and noting a few waivers that have been requested. The Conservation Commission sent a letter, again, just noting a couple of items, but no real concerns that should inhibit this board acting on the site plan. You all asked for feedback from the Board of Health, and the health director did share that with by email, saying that the existing septic system is more than sufficient to accommodate self-storage use. And that's it. We were working on some things on our end, but the plan itself, the site plan, has not changed, and we don't think that it needs to with what we have envisioned for the self-storage use in the existing building. Another update is, I think since the last time we were with you, we did receive the ZBA's final written special permit decision allowing the self-storage use. And we've recorded that after the appeal period with the Worcester Registry. So the ZBA's work is done. And then aside from that, we've had a good conversation, especially this afternoon, with abutters about their concerns. I know Attorney St. Andre is here and will speak on behalf of the abutters who he represents. But they shared with us, especially their concerns about potential multifamily development on the rear portion of the separate lot to the south. And I hope, have been able to provide them some reassurance about where those plans stand and the role that abutters in particular will play if those plans would advance at some point in the future. But they're not a part of what's before you tonight. So that's the brief recap on top of Karina's recap.
And I'd just also like to add, we did receive that email from the Board of Health confirming that the existing septic system was acceptable to the Board of Health. We did receive feedback from Conservation Agent Melissa Danza regarding issues with the detention basin and that they are considered wetlands by the commission.
Yes.
I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
And that what they found in the site visit was that the detention basins had grown in somewhat and were lacking capacity to function as they were designed to. In addition, some of the outlets were blocked, inlets and outlets, and I'm not sure what the status is of your, were you required to get a stormwater management permit?
No.
You weren't. So as part of site plan, I had recommended to Brian and Mr. Ferris that they can speak to the drainage functioning for this project. It is existing drainage, but it has kind of overgrown a little bit. It needs to be addressed. So I was hoping you could speak to that and confirm that the drainage is going to be or is up to par.
Yeah.
And then there was the third item. In the Fuss and O'Neill review comments, one of the items was that there's still light trespass across the property line. And as you know, town code says no light trespass.
Happy to speak to both those items. I welcome Mr. Tatro speaking to the detention basins. But long story short, as you mentioned, the two detention basins on site have become overgrown after years, probably more than a decade, it seems like, of neglect. They have some small trees growing in them. So the first thing we did is we did unclog the pipes that flow out of them, and they're functioning now fine. They're not holding water. And when there's a rain event, the water flows out of the pipe like it's supposed to. And what we mainly point you to is this was a detention basin layout and grading and that sort of thing that was done when the existing building on site was designed and permitted in the mid-80s. And we now have nearly 40 years of evidence where the layout they had then has worked fine. There's not, erosion happening. The water's not overflowing the two basins. It's not flowing out onto Parkerville Road. It's controlled like it's supposed to be. We're working with Melissa to clear the detention basins and get them back like they should have been maintained so that they can, there's no question they're functioning, but the evidence is they're functioning fine, especially since we've unblocked them.
Do you plan to repave?
No, we don't have any plans to
any of the
repave.
surfaces?
No.
And then I believe that one of the criteria for the Conservation Commission also was that you would be submitting a notice of intent
Yep.
for that work.
Yes, for the detention basin,
Right. Do you have a time frame for that?
as soon as possible. James has been working on it, so I would say days, not even weeks. It'll be submitted. And then in terms of light trespass, the light trespass that remains is in two areas. One is to the west, to the Eagle leasing parcel. And it's a matter of 5 to 10 feet on an uphill slope between the property line and a fence of theirs. So it's negligible at best, the light trespass to the west. And the slight bit of trespass to the south is onto our southern parcel, and it's minimal. So there's light trespass happening, but it's very, very minimal. In fact, there's actually a light trespass, if you wish to call it that, happening onto Route 9. But Fuss and O'Neill doesn't note that.
Because the criteria is different for on a road.
But still, I mean, are we going to be concerned about trespass?
I think there's exception there in the bylaw. the code allows for spill onto the street.
Mhm.
Right. The other thing that I had brought up was the planning board had comments regarding landscaping
Mhm.
on the property. And I had recommended maybe make sure you look, see what
Yeah.
those questions were.
Yeah.
Um,
As I recall, it was just to note, I think that juniper had been removed. There was something about barberry.
Yeah, again, James Tatro from Aspen Land Design. There was also a question that the very first site plan had called for leaving barberry and invasive species in place, and that was noted, I think, by one or more of the board members, and that was changed on the revised version of the site plan to say that that has to be removed. That was in one of the landscape guidelines of a larger parking lot on the lower level.
So I just wanted to point out some of the concerns that I conveyed in the interim as the process as we were continuing. So those didn't get lost.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's no questions. I just wanted to be clear that that you were aware of those.
Yes. Thank you.
Mr. Mills.
So just to be clear, there's not going to be any additional outside storage buildings or in the parking lot?
Not as part of this plan. If there would be, which we continue to think about, but we're not set that that'll happen, that there will be any new construction on the eastern parking lot. We understand that will take some stormwater analysis and a new stormwater plan and site plan revision. And there'll be a whole process associated with that.
And the lighting plan for like that parking area for nighttime lighting, what do you think, 24 hours or is it?
I think as a matter of security, it would be 24 hours. Yes.
Be interested to hear what the public has to say. when we get to that.
Mr. Stark.
Sorry, so Mr. Tatro, could you just take us through the plan real quick? Thanks.
Take you through in what sense? What are you?
Bring me up I'm just a little behind, so
Okay.
thanks.
Again, you've got Route 9, you've got Eagle Leasing over here, Parkerville Road. This is the existing building here. There's no proposed change whatsoever to its footprint. And simply a matter of changing the interior of that building from an office use to self-storage. There's an existing footbridge that goes down to the lower level, which is where most of the parking is and where see the red dash line, the existing septic system. And we're not proposing any change, what you see on here, all the gray area indicating pavement. We're not proposing any change at all to those limits of pavement. That's why we asked in this major site plan review filing for a waiver from the normal requirement to submit a drainage report, because we're not proposing to change any of the surfaces of the site.
So there's no work or construction being done other than on the interior of the
Correct.
existing building.
That is
There's no
correct.
exterior work at all.
That is correct, with the sole exception of changing lights, which was as part of the initial process, the initial filing, we were asked to submit a photometric plan. And as part of that, we first submitted one plan, and that showed some light spillover onto, I think, I always want to say Firebird,
Okay.
Firebird, the property at the corner. We also changed some other lights, lowered a couple of them. The one light, that was in question of light spillover is because there's an existing pole that's very high right over here. Actually two of them, which spilled just over this blue line is the property line, spilled just over this property line onto the Eagle Leasing site.
Okay, we don't have photometrics yet, correct?
No, actually, we submitted that as part of the revised septic plan. Site.
It's in the revised site.
Yeah.
All right. I
And the-
apologize for.
And just quickly, the other location in question is where there are two lights here and here, which have some spillover. They're actually already located on the other lot. At some point in this process, we are considering doing another A&R plan to divide the lots more appropriately. We divided the lots initially according to the zoning line. The zoning line between what is industrial on this side towards Route 9 and what's Residence A to the south away from Route 9, that line actually does not coincide with the limit of pavement. These parking spaces that I'm tapping my pen on are all actually in the Residence A zoning district, and the existing light poles beyond them, right here and right here, are all actually already in the Residence A zoning district. When we did the A&R plan, we divided this over here on the zoning line with the intention, okay, let's separate these, the industrial or commercial use and the residential use. Not foreseeing that the issue of light spillover would become anything that would be a sticking point.
To surround the parking lot, we've proposed a 10-foot privacy fence.
Can you
Eastern parking lot.
draw with your, finger or whatever,
Sure.
the privacy fence?
Sure, I'll draw on the plan. It's basically around the butter Firebird and over off the east end of pavement. And then, correct me, it does run all along this side. Is that correct? Okay. So it's essentially all along the south side, along the east side, and breaking off the butter Firebird. So the only,
I'm
so the only
sorry.
sides where this is not fenced in is the Route 9 access and towards the other side of the property, towards the wetland and what will be the self-storage building. But this side, and these two sides here of the parking area will have a 10-foot high fence around them.
And Mr. Ferris, you own both lots, right?
Yes,
Okay, so we have the photometrics. Photometrics show some spillover.
Yeah.
The light poles are on lot B.
It's
are
actually,
in
yeah,
lot
it's
B.
actually sort of a catch-22 because it's impossible for a light pole on this lot not to spill over onto this lot.
Of course. And are the light poles inside the fence or are they on the, I guess it would be the.
Correct, they are inside the fence, and that's evidenced in this case by actually talking to the lighting engineer. This pole here at a certain height had spillover onto the Firebird property. And we asked him, well, geez, what can we do about that? And he said, well, do you have a fence there? I said, oh, yeah, we already have a 10-foot high fence proposed here. He said, oh, send that to me and let me reflect that on the plan. And that will show that light, which was going to just touch the edge of the Firebird property, will not, because it's going to actually be shooting onto the side of the fence.
So how far in feet are the light poles inside the fence?
Oh, gosh.
James, maybe you could just move a little bit closer to the end of the bench right there and kind of hold it up so the audience can see as
Okay.
well, unless you brought an easel. Okay.
I was not clever enough to bring these.
I have one,
Yeah, I'm just, do you see where the light poles are here?
The light pole is 8 feet from the property line, this light pole here. And I guess that this one here is a similar distance, the one immediately to the south of Firebird. Yeah, it's also about 8 feet.
8 feet inside the fence. Is the fence right on?
The fence is going to be just off the property line, so it'll probably be 6 feet from the fence.
Okay. All right.
Just trying to think if there's anything else to be, oh, just quickly, the couple detention basins which were referred to are these areas hatched blue and white here and here. They receive and have for 30+ years discharge from the catch basins along the edge of pavement here, discharge into this basin. It discharges to this wetland and flows out and is to Route 9.
Well, how is this different than what was happening before?
That's the same. I'm just
Okay.
wanted to explain what's.
There's been no change in the
Correct.
discharge or the drainage.
Correct, and this existing basin here right now receives discharge from a couple of drainage structures on the south side of pavement here. It will in the future, and I believe that it gets under Parkerville Road to the wetland on the other side.
So how is it that a change of use does not result in a change in the drainage?
Because it's only a change of the interior of this building.
But that wouldn't that possibly change discharge?
There's really no way, unless the paved surface or the amount of roof or is changed, or if some other aspect of the cover is changed, if there were a wooded area, which we were making lawn, which is not the case. If they were clever enough to change the interior of the building without changing anything outside, you wouldn't necessarily even know. Because there's no change that's gonna happen to these paved surfaces, no addition of them. And like I say, no change of other surface, again, wooded cover sheds less water than the lawn, but we're not changing any wood covered lawn or anything else. It's simply, as Mr. Charbel said, it's simply a matter of changing self-storage to be the use in the interior of this building.
So, and thanks a lot for reviewing the plan. I appreciate that. I'm glad you made it. So I don't remember a time, guys, when I've reviewed and approved a plan that, and maybe we have, and it's just not coming to my mind right now, but I don't remember a time when we reviewed a plan that had photometrics, any part of the site, so to speak, on a different lot than was on the agenda, so to speak. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's kind of my first thought right now.
And I would respond that it's existing structures that are there now.
Right.
Existing light poles.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, I mean, I could see this kind of going to town council and getting his opinion on, because I just don't remember the planning board doing that before.
If I may,
Because you guys recorded the A&R, right?
for the southern lot, yes.
Just so I get the sequence of events correct. The A&R got done, and then you came to us with this change of use request.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just saying, because I like to be very forthright with the
we
proponents
appreciate that.
in these situations.
Yeah.
You guys have got, this is your time. I'm just saying, right now, I've never seen this before, and that would be something I would need to understand.
James and I have not talked through this, but I've thought to myself, when it comes to the light spill, how do we fix that? And I imagine we change the fixtures or we lower the fixtures, which can be done. I think Dave would be happy to do that, to take an issue off the table. But
Okay, but
But-
the other
but-
thing you only want to think about, I mean, he's doing another A&R, because to me, like, the fact that it's on different lots doesn't
I think
make sense.
I think changing a light fixture is easier than going through another A&R process
Okay.
and the time associated with that.
Got it.
But lowering a fixture or changing a fixture, to me, doesn't make a site more secure. For instance, a commercial site on Route 9, if we change make the light pole to the northwest lower.
Yeah, we're pretty careful about light.
Understood.
So you could just
If
eliminate
I could
those
jump
two or
in,
three lights.
I think it's sort of the best solution is kind of a combination, because I agree with you that the light pole towards the Eagle leasing side, simply lowering it would probably address that issue to get a little bit of light spill off from the edge of their property. Right now, again, we're sort of in a catch-22, where if these light poles are on another lot, it's really impossible for them not to have light on another lot. So
I think that's what I was trying.
the board members'
Basically.
point there, I
You
think.
you talked about the fence too, and the parking lot. That really goes with that lot. I think that, I can see why you guys did the A&R the way you did, but it kind of gives us all.
Yeah, I think if that's the issue, the lights that are on that lot, we just assume rather than delay, eliminate those lights. And in terms of the fencing, I think because the town picked that arbitrary line back whenever it did to separate zoning, probably very thoughtfully, but nonetheless, I think they put in that right to extend 30 feet into alternative zoning, which is changing from commercial to res. So I think putting the fence through res or commercial, the intent behind putting an arbitrary line like that is to give any applicant going forward flexibility to be able to go into another zone that the town at some random point in time changed zoning to give people going forward a little bit of flexibility to the arbitrary line that's drawn on the page. So I think that's the intent behind zoning regs. I think they would allow you to go 30 feet from commercial rules and regulations into a residential area. So,
Yeah.
but to the extent that the lights are the issue, we could just eliminate them.
Do you understand what I?
100%. I
Okay,
get it.
Yeah, I'm thinking a lot, I'm thinking of the
It's a
lots.
different lot.
Right.
You're thinking about the stuff, the fence, the lights. I'm thinking about the lots.
Right. And so
We do site plan on a lot.
right. So I think we just take those lights out of the equation as part of this lot. I think to the extent we were to eliminate those lights, it keeps it contained within that line.
But it's not just the lights. I mean, there's the parking lot, the fence, there's the fact that it's a site. I'm just thrown by the fact that we're doing a site plan. In fact, a modification of the site plan on now a site that extends into another lot.
Mhm.
That's all I'm not saying, I'm not telling you to move the lights or anything,
Right.
move the fence or anything. I'm saying, I don't know how to do this.
Okay.
That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ms. Houlihan?
Thank you. Yeah, I concur. I'm with you on the lot concern. I don't know what that requires, whether it's another A&R or in some sort of easement. But my concern is those are 20-foot poles. There is spillage and we're really strict about light trespass. So I think we're gonna have to figure that out, lower the lights
We'll
or
delete
take
this.
down the poles and put on 10-foot poles.
We're deleting the 2 poles.
Okay, but you've been talking about safety that's your whole premise for lighting. So are you eliminating the safety issue on the south side of the lot?
No, there are other light poles there that don't create spillover that can remain to provide lighting for that eastern parking lot.
So I have the 3 light poles and they all have spillage.
Yeah, to the extent there's a height issue with the lights, we've already gotten the quotes to reduce them because that was a concern you raised, and we actually already get the hard quote. I just don't know the dollar amount from the welding company that'll take care of that. So that's a very easy give.
So I think that is something that has to be done because if you want to meet your safety requirements and require our needs. But I will still come back to, I think we would still need to go to town council around how to actually accommodate this 2 lot for one site plan. I also wanted clarity. Are you still having the card code on the entrance to the parking lot? You'll enclose that structure?
Yes.
Okay, because I think there was some level of a worry of having backup there. And trying to accommodate that if they're.
We had talked with the
Now.
police chief about that before submitting the site plan. And he just wanted to make sure there was enough for 2 cars to line up, and there's room for that as shown on what's behind you. So at least from his perspective, that was adequate.
And that's 2 cars
Oh,
before, any backup would be into the deceleration lane or whatever we want to call it, the extra lane. It's not into one of the 2 primary travel lanes of Route 9. But there's space already for 2 cars before that, again, I'll say deceleration.
Coming out of there. And then the challenge and my only concern is someone pulls in there, they don't have a card, there's enough to turn around if there's a car behind them.
It's actually extra wide. Let me just, it's 34 feet wide. That driveway entrance, it's not the standard 24 feet that you see now. So it actually provides a relatively easy 3-point turn space.
Can you show that in an auto turn sketch? Like, could you email me I forget what they're called, use auto turn to show truck turning movement pattern.
What, to show somebody doing a 3-point or?
That it can be done.
Okay. Sure.
Right, I know it's not typical because usually we need to see the fire truck, but maybe it would help demonstrate that a car could, with a minimal, not a 50-point turn around in that spot.
Sure. Like I say, we're extremely confident that at 34 feet, cars will be able to do that. Obviously, it's driving out is 24 and almost.
I mean, do you have the software capable to do that?
I got just recently a lovely membership in the auto turn online thing, and I'm just getting up to speed with it. And
But it should let you do cars,
yeah,
right?
well, I've
Not
only
just-
tried the fire truck so far.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because you have to see how far they have to back out in order to make that turn.
Right.
Are they going over the sideline, are they going over the shoulder lane? Back out and turn.
I can tell you actually from having parked in front of this just this afternoon, this is actually a Cape Cod berm that any vehicle can drive up. Again, there could be snowbanks, so that's something people could cite, but it's not a hard berm, it's not a slope to vertical granite, and I have no extra ground clearance and have no trouble.
Just give a level of comfort to show that it is possible.
And then, Ms. Latrell, I was interested in just hearing about the abutter. I mean, you mentioned you've had a conversation with the abutter attorney. I think it's, you know, we want to hear what the public has to say. We've read their letter. So having an update on exactly that would be helpful.
I'll go through the board first and then.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for coming in, and I have just one or two questions. The conservation agent wrote a letter summarizing things at the end of September and mentioned that the site is inadvertently taking on a lot of water from Eagle Leasing parking lot and their stormwater outfall. I was just wondering if you can show me, and also how much water, and Chief mentioned that they're going to take a look at that, if you can give an update. Where is this water going?
I believe it's coming toward this, what's in green here is wetland. And this is this narrow finger of wetland is flow from Eagle Leasing coming down into the site, into the broader wetland and eventually towards Route 9. So I believe what she's talking about is flow. It might not be solely at this specific point. Again, the blue line is the property line for Eagle Leasing. But it's primarily into this channel right here.
And so is there any update? She said that they were going to be taking a look at it. Did they walk the property, or is this a concern in any way? It doesn't look like it's near the building.
Just to interject, I think that the plan was to have our outside environmental engineer update the basin that's closest to that area and put a plan that's pretty detailed in terms of how the work would be done in a formal NOI and rescope the entire basin to be consistent with the way it was originally designed. And the engineers are working on that, and we're fully planning on going forward with an NOI rather than just working on it. And that was the agreement we had with Melissa for that basin and the other one. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's all I had.
Thank you. I'm happy to see that the oak trees, the mature oak trees on Route 9 are going to be preserved. Although the key still says existing oak tree to be removed.
Oh.
They're saying.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And the landscaping, they're all non-native trees, shrubs, and plants.
They are native. Which ones you're saying are not?
So I revised August 31, is that the current?
Yeah.
So the Chinese dogwood,
I have to confess, I don't know exactly where that is proposed, and I don't know the.
Let me see if I can get that pulled up on the screen.
it's on the landscape plan.
Colleen, can you call up the landscape plan? Sheet is that?
L3.
Sheet L3. She can hear me. She's in her office listening. And I'm not just talking to the air. She's been sick, so she's in her office, but she's hearing everything. So
Where's it in the Dropbox?
it's on the Dropbox.
September 12th.
Yes, it's also, it's also in tonight's meeting as Dropbox. If you look at site plans. I'll show you.
You know, I think, too, I'm just thinking again about what you asked. I know that none of the proposed species are invasive species. I can't, you use the word native, and maybe that's an important distinction, because I know that after the initial review and the comment about the landscape architect saying that about leaving barberry in one of the islands, landscape islands, that we've raised the point with him that the board definitely wants to see that no invasive species left or proposed. And I can't speak to whether Chinese dogwood is considered quote native or not at this point.
I would tell you that Chinese dogwood is not native to New England.
But it is. But I don't believe that he included any invasive species.
Yeah, well, that would be illegal. But we also require native species to support that. Yeah, so all of those plants listed there, none of them are native. They're all either cultivars or non-native.
And I recommend if you go to gobotany.com, James, and you can get some similar plants.
Okay, I'll just raise that point to the landscape architect.
They should know that.
Yeah.
Okay, they'll be able to tell you. They can get some equal, but native, straight native species.
Good point.
And there's a side and rear landscape buffer required, or
Well, the side landscape buffer, you're already working with an existing parking lot that's in certain proximity to the Eagle leasing property. It's, if they right scale here, it's 3 to 4 feet off the Eagle property over here at the north end. And there's just no way to, unless we're going to take out handicap parking spaces, there's no way to achieve that. I would also note, though, that this portion of this property is actually several feet lower than the adjacent Eagle leasing property. So that feature of buffering and visual breakup between the two lots is actually created in this case by the existing topography.
Yeah, there's a tiered stone wall on that site that probably the plan doesn't make as clear, but the first tier I would guesstimate is 8 feet, and then it steps up another 4 feet. And the tar runs directly up to it at this point.
and in the parking lot with the fencing, where's the snow storage going to be?
Well, it's going to be in multiple places. It's going to be off the edge here in each of the islands themselves. There's another spot over here of separation from wetland area. And also off the south side, again, there's separation from the wetland area there. And again, probably some would, just the natural way the plow driver will go through things, some of it would get pushed off onto the east edge.
So the snow is going to be pushed onto the landscaped islands there?
I'm just anticipating that the natural way that plow drivers do these things, that some of it is going to get pushed onto that. Just to be realistic about what they'll do.
Because most plants don't like a ton of salt.
There aren't any plants that like a ton of snow.
Well, salt, that's the issue. So are you going to be looking for a waiver for the landscape buffer?
I think we would have to, just for the existing site topography and layout. There's just no way to get a buffer off to the Eagle leasing property again, which sits much higher. We'll look into that to see if there's any other site boundary where we would need to ask for that, or where we could do something to help create it.
And you're still on the landscape plan, you're still showing the juniper to be trimmed, which is no longer there.
Okay, that's a mistake then, if that's still a mistake.
That's all I have for now. Is there anyone in the audience?
I'd like to ask Mr. Taco a question. John St. Andre. Mr. Taco, does the site plan that you have in your hand, does that provide any access or egress to Parkerville Road for either the residential site or the commercial site?
Does it provide it or allow it?
Either or.
It does not provide it. Theoretically, the adjacent lot could access Parkerville Road. Theoretically, this lot could access Parkerville Road from it. That's the simple fact of the layout and where the existing properties are.
So are you asking for permission from the board to access Parkerville Road? Or are you saying just theoretically it could physically be done?
I'll answer that. The applicant is not asking for egress or ingress from the site plan property to Parkerville Road.
And that includes the proposed lot B, which is the residential lot?
Your question and what's before the board relates to the site plan property adjacent to 250.
I'm asking you, does the residential, are you asking for access to Parkerville Road from the residential lot that appears on that?
No, there's no plan with the residential piece of this before the board, and there's no request for that, is the answer.
Well, that squares into the letter that I wrote the board, because there are restrictions on this property as a complete parcel. And the restrictions clearly state in 1990 that there will be no egress from this entire parcel to Parkerville Road. Now, it seems that there might be. And I don't think the board removed those restrictions when it endorsed the A&R plan, but it seems now that there's a vagueness that needs to be clarified here. And that was the reason for my letter to the board. So I don't know if we're going to discuss that tonight or whether Mr. Ferris and his attorney should be given an opportunity to respond to that, which I think they should.
So the next agenda item is the discussion of that, of the letter. The comments now should be strictly the site plan and
Okay.
the storage facility.
And I'm happy to address that when Madam Chair is ready.
The other,
Yeah.
the letter?
Yeah, well, his concern, yeah, around the egress issues. So whenever you think it's appropriate, I'll address that.
Okay. Why don't we wait until we discuss the letter? Anyone else have any comment on the site plan, which is the storage facility?
So John Palmer, 131 Parkerville Road. And I am all for the healthy economic use of the building as self-storage. I get a little bit concerned about the use of the parking lot as self-storage, only because I'd be concerned with noise and light pollution and buffering between that parking lot and the butters. But so long as, you know, the planning board addresses those light and noise pollution concerns and hours of operation, that sort of thing, you know, I'd be okay with the proposed use.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Thanks. Self-storage, it's going to be in the building, right? Correct. There's not going to be any self-storage units in the parking lot, are there?
We talked with the board about that in August.
Okay.
Yeah, that's part of what the applicant is interested in doing, is potentially having units on the parking lot.
But that's not currently before us. No, there's units in the parking lot.
In terms of portable temporary units, yes, that's part of this application. As I said in
Can
August.
you show us on the plan?
Well, sir, just quickly, the parking requirement for this building includes these spaces and the spaces on the westerly boundary of the larger parking lot. The rest of the parking area could be devoted towards the use that Mr. Charter was citing, which would be the placement of temporary pods or other temporary storage structures for various uses.
Why isn't it on the plan?
There's no specific way to say where they would be at this point.
Like, basically, you're gonna have outside storage in that parking lot, whether it could be commercial vehicles, it could be people's boats, it could be self-storage pods. But we talked about you're not planning on stacking them on top of each other.
That's right.
Self-storage pods, it's just
Yep.
one level, so it wouldn't be like 3 tiers high. But it would be an outside storage facility where, you know, it could be cars, it could be landscaping trucks, it could be flowers, I mean, whoever wants to have something stored outside. I think.
Yep.
I don't want to speak
That's
for you.
fair.
That's the way I interpret it.
You know, and just total transparency with the board, I think Southborough is a little unique in terms of its process, and Karina and I spoke about this offline, where, you know, we have an approved use from the ZBA, and I think they were pretty thoughtful about the use because of the location and the other alternative uses that would be frankly higher and best use in terms of a value to the site, where we could extract a lot more value from the site using it in a lot of different ways other than self-storage. This is pretty low impact to the community, number one, but number two, it's reusing existing assets that have been dormant and on the tax books at less than a third of the true market value, right? So the town spent 10 years at an assessed value south of $3 million or around that number. It should be double or triple that with full utilization on a NOI, net operating income basis. So to take an existing asset like this and just reinforce, you know, interior structure and put it to some, you know, low impact use is lower car count, lower everything. And so from a site standpoint, it's a pretty easy give for the community, and the benefit is pretty big in terms of what the site could be in terms of best use. There could be a lot of different utilizations in this zoning that would be frankly not in keeping with the community or the needs in the community. We did a study prior to bringing this before the board, before bank would finance it. It papers out and it'll work well, and there's competitors in the marketplace and they're full to capacity. So it's a pretty easy use in terms of the outdoor impact to the site, in terms of adding additional parking or anything like that. It's pretty low. I expect we will come before the board at some point to better utilize the parking lot area, and we've been very clear in communicating with the neighbors about that. And I think what we could have done as applicants a little better in terms of communicating with our neighbors, and we thought we were pretty clear, but we clarified that in the meeting prior to this hearing, is that there are no concrete plans with the back piece of the residential component, which I think is the biggest concern to the community. And we've hashed out and talked about different ideas that property might be more in keeping with the community. But I think that in terms of what we're trying to do with this site, it's rare in my development world where you can go before a board and say, we're kind of keeping everything pretty much the way it is. If we can adjust height levels for the community and bring them down the poles, we've got the quotes, we'll do that. If you need some poles moved to another side of the fence, or you need town council, I respect that and understand. I just want to make it clear to the panel that Southborough is truly unique in that your building inspector has to stop work on an interior build out to that building until a site plan has been issued for the entire project, which means she feels as though her hands are tied, where most communities will issue you the permit for the interior work that's not to change in front of this panel, and then they'll hold CO until a site plan has been agreed upon by your panel. And so the timeliness of our application, I think, you know, we want to make sure we leave tonight's meeting with all the needs that the panel would need so that we can bring them back at the next hearing and move forward with the project. Because, you know, we basically stopped all work in the building because we've reached the permit of demo and existing welding work that would be legally allowed in this community under her jurisdiction. So that's kind of where we are transparently.
So, like, let's say hypothetically, a tradesman brought a generator out into the temporary area and started working out there with power tools.
Right.
What's to stop that from happening, to address the other's concern?
Well, I think we would have rules and regulations around all kinds of issues that noise work. You know, we would want that.
So, I mean,
as much as they would want it.
It would definitely help, I think, the board if we could review the
Rules and regs.
proposed.
Will the fencing have any sound mitigation?
It's primarily a visual barrier. It would have some effect towards that, but it's not it wouldn't be a fence specifically designed for that. It's, you know, a barrier fence, you know, the side of 128 or Mass Pike or something. It's a 10-foot high fence with slats, which will reduce sound, but that's not its specific.
That's also a concern if a truck comes in at 3 o'clock in the morning, and is backing into a parking space.
Yeah, I can tell you the trucks coming down that hill, the speeds they're coming over that hill will be far louder than anybody pulling into that site.
Well, those backup alarms are jarring. I live down the street from the Pike and spent 4 months awake listening to trucks backing up from Sturbridge.
I respectfully understand and would share with the panel that I delivered newspapers less than 25 feet from that entrance as an 11-year-old. So I'm very familiar with the terrain.
Anyone else?
So just a couple more statements from my perspective. So we did have a small group of us had a productive meeting with David and Ryan this afternoon on what they're proposing here. And once again, I am for the healthy, economic, individually anyhow, the healthy economic use of the building as self-storage, and possibly even the parking lot as self-storage, provided we put some hours of operation and some light and noise considerations in the use of that parking lot. My much bigger concern is with, any sort of development that happens on the back, 5.5 acres, zoned residential A. But I'll stand down and voice those concerns at the right appropriate moment.
Okay.
We do have an attendee in the Zoom room. Mr. Jimmy Mansell would like to speak.
Okay.
Hey, sorry, Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good evening. Just wanted,
State your address.
yes, 7 Schuyler Drive.
So Jimmy Mansell, what Skylar?
7 Schuyler Drive.
Thank you.
Just wanted to thank David Ferris and the entire Ferris team for continuing to work with the kind of the neighborhood group. It is meaningful and impactful, as kind of others have said tonight. I just wanted to make comment on the kind of industrial outdoor storage component of it. I personally work in real estate private equity. I see these things all the time. I would just encourage the members to maybe look around and see some of the type of uses that go on here. It's not necessarily kind of the clean pod type of uses, and maybe a question for David and his team. I hate to work in the realm of hypotheticals, but to throw it out there, if there were a single user looking to lease out your entire parking lot to do, outdoor storage, is that something your team would consider? And I won't lead the witness here. I'll state my concern outright, which is that, on something like that, you could definitely see a potential user, storing massive amounts of kind of outdoor equipment, transformers, work equipment, basically the list is endless, just trying to make sure that there's something that looks professional, reasonable, and kind of in keeping with something that's zoned industrial. Thank you.
Someone 13,000 square away. What are the hours of operation? Is it a manned storage operation?
I'm sorry, could you just
Sure.
say that your name one more
Azad
time?
from 13,000 square away. I'm just curious about the hours of operation and if the operation is manned 24 hours.
Yeah, it would be manned during normal business hours.
No business hours,
Yeah.
but then a key to get into the card to get into the parking lot 24/7,
The building,
or the building.
the building piece.
And
yeah.
what about the parking lot?
I
the
don't
outdoor
anticipate that
storage?
happening with the parking. We have a third party that would be the manager of the asset, so I'd go back to them and check with them.
Okay.
Just continuing on that, from personal experience, I did rent storage unit in Westboro 2 years back, and I remember going, checking in, I'm not manned, checking into the storage location to open my storage unit, but I did see many tradesmen who would come in and just store that stuff temporarily, and they were coming in and out at all times.
Mhm.
Oftentimes it was very noisy, right? So that, talking about this, storing equipment and other things just brings that back, memory back. And so I just want to highlight that.
And then in response to the previous question about renting the whole space out to one user with transformers and other.
Yeah, we haven't been approached by any single users to rent the parcel. We hadn't anticipated it, and as I think I mentioned to the board, I don't want to cloud the application before you, but I anticipate the use is gonna change. It's gonna make a lot of this discussion relatively moot, because I could see us potentially coming before the board for another intended use on that part of the site in the future. And I wanted to just be transparent with the community, and I was with the representatives that we met with prior to this meeting.
Anyone else? Anyone? One more?
Look here, we currently have 9 attendees, no hands raised.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So Eric Glazer, 9 Scholar Drive, just maybe in a dumb question, but I assume the property would have to abide by whatever's noise bylaws are in place for the town. So perhaps as an issue of the time of day for the noises. So I assume it would have to be in compliance with whatever relevant bylaws for noise and lighting.
That's correct. Sure.
So can you help me again with the outside parking, the hours of operations? Because I think I heard before that it would be, you could go in 24/7 with a key fob. That's the impression I had. What I think I just heard from you is that it would.
The building would be that way, and I think I would see the parking lot area having restricted access. Because there's no reason we would want people entering the parking lot area in certain windows of time. It would be the building that we would want to have them be able to have 24/7 access. But the outdoor parking area, we wouldn't anticipate that. That would probably open itself to mischief and problems for a managerial level. And we would likely restrict it and do it on an as-needed special request basis if someone were after hours use for some special purpose. But as a general rule, I would anticipate the manager would restrict hours on that portion of the site.
So then, with that, then the other big piece that I keep hearing, and I think of too, we talk about lighting out there. From a safety reason, then I think once you get past whatever the hours of operation are, people would be going in, you could probably have the lights down unless you're worried about theft or anything.
Right.
If it's all fenced in and everything, would you still need the lights on 24/7?
I don't know that you'd need them on 24/7. I think you'd need sensors that they would turn on upon sensing any movement,
Okay,
which,
because I think that I think me as a board member would be a lot more palatable too.
yeah,
And I think that's what I'm hearing from the residents as well.
for sure.
You don't want it like, I know there won't be like spillage going on, but a beacon of light.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a fence is white that just reflects.
As a guy that owns several buildings already in your community, I'm pretty sensitive to
No,
it myself.
I'm
From an
just-
electric standpoint, we hedged everything for 3 to 5 years of
Yeah,
good kilowatt rates, but I still don't want to burn it. Yeah,
okay. So I just want to make sure we're all clear and on the same page.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the board?
Well, I have a question for the board.
Okay.
It has to do with the self-storage that's outside, because at the beginning of the presentation, we were told that's just really happening inside the building. So is this site plan about just inside the building and parking lot would be for vehicles only? Is this to me, I think we had sort of this discussion at the beginning, and I actually thought the proponent was going to come back with sort of more details of that, what that might look like. But if we're looking at the original plan, I don't think that's part of the original plan, so I need some clarification on that.
Well, I think that maybe Brian, you can explain the ZBA's special permit that you currently have for the site and what that means for the use of not just the building, but the parking lot beyond the building parking area.
Happy to. Yeah, the special permit we received from the ZBA is broad and contains no conditions. So it allows the self-storage use, I think because it exceeds 50,000 square feet without condition across the entire site plan parcel that you're now considering. And I believe that when we first had our extensive presentation in late August, that I had talked about not just self-storage within the structure, but also outdoor storage in the lot.
Yeah, and this board had a lot of questions because you were talking about, you were just introducing some of those comments, and I thought it was sort of preliminary. So thank you for that update. But what does that mean to the plans in front of us? Would you be then updating these plans to provide more information on the outdoor self-storage?
We'd be happy to have a conversation about conditions that this board would impose that relate to the outdoor use. But in terms of what it physically looks like, as James said, it could consist of pods or other everything there would be movable. And so because it's movable, it's difficult to, through a site plan, which is of course all bird's eye view, say what's going to be where.
So, Chair, just from point of process, right? So I think the proponent is looking to have this wrapped up in 2 meetings. So typically we'd have one meeting where we go over conditions and everything and then draft them all up and then have the next meeting, time that it got out to all the residents, they could see what it was, and if there are any questions or tweaking, they would be at the next meeting that happens. So if we're talking about 2 meetings, we're gonna have our next meeting that could be lined up to do conditions and everything, or requirements on can't stack the pods and what the hours and the lights are for the outside, which seems to be the biggest piece. I'm not saying this necessarily for you, but for everyone to hear for our typical process. And then once we got all that written down and agreed upon, everyone will be able to review it. And then the next meeting, assuming there were no other changes or nothing popped up, we do a vote, right?
Yeah, but I don't know if we can.
That's why I'm just
we'll
talking
have
from
the
a
conditions
process.
For the next,
Well, we do it at the next meeting. We do the conditions at the next meeting.
we'll discuss them, yeah.
Discuss them, write them up, get them out, and then the following meeting, confirm, there's been no changes, everyone agrees to them, no one had an issue, and then vote. Provided everything goes smooth from here.
So
Seems tight.
I would draft conditions that would become part of the final decision of approval. If that's the way the planning board decides to move. A draft set of conditions ready for November 7th. That the planning board could review. Once I have them done, I would provide them to the applicant so he can add or pose any potential revisions. Then the board could review those at the November 7th meeting and agree to those terms. Then a decision could be finalized and voted on at the November 21st. If everything goes the way we anticipate, the trespass is addressed, the light fixtures and light poles are addressed. If the landscaping is addressed, if the planning board is comfortable with the basins and the drainage system as it exists to continue to function without any further calculation or evidence that they function, but from historic evidence that they're working according to.
The request for legal opinion.
And the request for legal opinion regarding
A lot.
the lot. The parking lot extending into the other site, the other parcel. And you were specifically talking about the light poles. Or just the parking itself.
Just that we're
The site.
looking at a site plan that's extended
Overlaps
into
two
another lot.
properties. Two
Right.
zones.
Right, and one of the concerns that relative to that is that the town code indicates that you can only go 30 feet into a more restricted.
Right, but that's one lot.
That's right, this is going over, I keep forgetting that, that's right, so it's 2 lots. And then is there a concern with the basin that was functioning for the entire site not completely on the site without an easement? Right, so you have a basin that is on the lower lot that was part of the drainage that functions for the whole lot. So if that basin is used to mitigate stormwater for the building and the parking lot, would there have to be an easement?
There is one.
You have one.
Yeah, the A&R that was done previously contained an easement which included all of this basin.
Okay, and since there's no development currently on the lower lot, there's no drainage for the lower lot, or was the lower lot incorporated into the stormwater calcs for that?
Just some overland flow from a portion of the lower lot, but no, as you say, no developed stormwater capture system discharging into that basin.
So does currently water from the lower lot use the system?
Correct. That's unavoidable because this is a higher grade than here. And that's where runoff from, for instance, raindrop falling on this portion of this lot. Ends up.
Yeah, so surface runoff, but nothing from the developed parcel. There's nothing else developed on the lower parcel that contributes to the
Correct.
stormwater.
Correct.
Right, so I did, yeah, I remember, I can't see it on the as, but I can't see this close, but I do recall it was on the A&R plan description of, or at least outline, the boundary of an easement.
Madam Chair, if I may, if the panel thinks we may be headed to 2 to 3 more meetings to flesh out all the details, I'm not sure if this panel has the authority or has in the past recommended to the building inspector at least the work within the 4 corners that's interior focused, that has nothing to do with the site, that we'd be allowed to at least continue or have her issue the permit to be able to do the interior work to the building. Because I think, you know, we had all these people mobilized and now we're offline for several weeks. I think because we've been in this state of flux of figuring out what the best procedure is. And I think if we're going to take appropriate care and time for you to review all the details, that would reduce a hardship to us to at least be able to continue. Because we're not going to realistically use this outdoor section for 6 months. You know, there's no rush on that, but we'd like to at least keep the interior tracking to plan. So I'm not sure if you could make that recommendation on our behalf. If you could, it would be very accommodative.
So, to be fair to the applicant, I'd be okay with that, but knowing that it's up to you on you're taking the risk.
Yeah, we have a use interior to the building. And so the ZBA's found it appropriate to be able to use it. It's just a function of, we're not going to get a CO until we've met all the criteria that your panel puts before us. So it's not even a potential to be used as a site on even a preliminary conditionary basis. It's more just to be able to continue the interior work in the interim.
I mean, we don't even, again, I'm wrong about a few things today. I don't think we even have any jurisdiction now or any plan to review on the interior.
No.
So it makes no sense to hold that.
The only thing you have, they usually submit architectural plans and elevations, so you have an understanding of what's going on inside the building. It's not
There's not changing.
jurisdiction over the site.
That means we should allow it.
It's going to be less people in the building and
Right.
what's going to be going in the septic system anyhow.
We've eliminated almost all the bathrooms. Yeah.
Oh, to the planning board for issuing the building permit.
Correct. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, any building permit that's part of a project that has a site plan. In front of the planning board. Different departments, all departments sign off on the building permit. So usually it's halted because they don't have site plans. Typically you get your building permit after site plan because, but if this happens to be an existing building, that's a different circumstance. If they were building a new building, they wouldn't be at this point.
Exactly.
Because they couldn't build a new building because they don't have their site plan. But because there's existing drainage and there's existing circulation, and there's no outside repaving, the risk is in terms of the building. And if it doesn't pan out the way you want, it's Mr. Ferris's economic impact. So whatever people want to do. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
So lighting, Landscaping, I would suggest you look at our landscaping bylaw, because there are, one tree per 20 linear feet along Route 9, and there are a lot of things that aren't addressed in this plan. And the non-natives. Hours of operation.
Noise bylaw.
Noise. Anything else? And we will ask town council about the 2 lots.
We're putting a town for request. We will.
The easement that exists for the basin didn't include the parking structure that overflows into the residential zone A with the lighting fixtures.
The easement actually, actually, you can see the line. The drainage easement goes from Parkerville Road, incorporates the entire basin, runs westerly and veers off, hits the property line. So this, what I'm tracing again, it's all within the easement and includes actually the couple structures that are in the parking lot now that discharge to that basin.
So I think that's important to note too. The easement covers the lighting and the fence and the parking structure, as well as the basement with the request to the attorney.
To town council.
Yeah, so I have the A&R on my screen and I can see it, so I can tell you, just to save time here, that the proposed drainage easement, 1.025 acres, extends from, let me show you on the screen real quick, so everybody understands. That point, so, yeah, this one. Yeah, so the drain, there it is, you can see the dashed line right here. See this line, I think this represents the easement. And here it is, the drainage easement. So the parking is within that easement, but it's not called a parking easement, we're referring to drainage. So I will submit a request to town council to find one project overlapping into another parcel.
Motion to continue the public hearing. Extension.
I'm sure I make a motion that we grant the extension requests for FD 2250 Turnpike Road LLC as requested by the applicant to the hearing shall be continued to November 7th, 2022, 7 p.m. 7:05 p.m. And we will reach a decision. Shall be extended to November 11th, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, Latrell, yes.
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
I'm trying to make a motion. We continue the public hearing for 250 Turnpike Road. Change of use for a storage facility, major site plan approval to continue to November 7th at 7:05 p.m. 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, Latrell, yes.
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes.
Thank you.
So that's the public
Thank you.
hearing section. Then we're going to discuss the.
Do you want us to stay here and let them talk here? We'll sit over
Yeah.
there maybe? Yeah.
Yeah.
Give them a chance there.
So you want to pick this up?
Yeah. So I just want to give a quick history on what we've received from the neighborhood and their attorney, St. Andre. On November 12th, we were hand delivered a memo oh, I'm sorry. No, this one was September, this is the first one. I'm gonna go back with it all this. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. We were given a note, we were hand delivered memo to the town of Suffolk Planning Board from the neighbors and abutters of 250 Turnpike Road regarding 250 Turnpike Road special permit by First Development dated September 8th. Then following that, we received also an email, a letter from on September 29th. I believe Mimi, as planning board chair, you were emailed a letter from St. Andre Law Offices regarding request for information for 250 Turnpike Road regarding prior site plans, prior special permits, etc. And then finally, on October 11th, Attorney John St. Andre mailed the planning board via the chair a letter to request for clarification of May 9th, 2022 endorsement of the subdivision approval not required in A&R for 250 Turnpike Road. As you recall, the planning board had endorsed an A&R on May 9th, which split the existing lot into the two that we've been discussing this evening, the northern lot. I want to point out that in 1986, there was a site plan approval which went to the select board at that time. And then I have record of 1990, there was a special permit through the zoning board of appeals for the light manufacturing and assembly use at this location. It's my understanding that prior to this current project, for the storage, self-storage facility, that it was used as an office building. So that brings us to this evening where we let Attorney St. Andre know that this was going to be on the agenda, and I believe you're here to represent your community.
I don't know if you've had a chance to read my letter, but I'll try to shorten it if I can. Back in 1986, when Andrew Lane applied for permission to build 250 Turnpike Road, the parcel was a little bit over 9 acres, but it was one parcel. It had, part of it fell in the industrial zone, part of it was in residential, but the entire parcel was one parcel. It was not subdivided. It did not consist of 2 lots. In 1986, the select board allowed that to take place, but they put a restriction on it. And it said that Andrew Lane would, by deed restriction and to be noted on the recorded plan, provide a permanent open space buffer to be preserved in perpetuity. Then in 1990, the Zoning Board of Appeals granted to Leaf Systems a special use permit allowing light manufacturing and assembly on that entire lot. But they placed restrictions on it. Their neighbors, the abutters, came out and complained that we don't want access from this lot onto Parkerville Road for safety concerns, in addition to other things. And several people from the town boards, like the departments, came forward and said there's a problem with the safety of this area here. And that led to these restrictions being imposed. No building shall be erected on the residential A lot, which is now Lot B on this A&R plan, that no egress shall be allowed from the property onto Parkerville Road. and that a 25-foot buffer of wooded area would be maintained where the residential properties meet. So far, so good. So we kind of fast forward to 2022, when Mr. Ferris submitted the A&R plan. And what I'm concerned about is whether or not when the plan endorsed when the board endorsed the A&R plan that subdivision approval was not required, it somehow affected those restrictions that had been placed in 1986 and 1990. I don't think they were, but it doesn't seem that Mr. Ferris and his team would agree to that. But I would like to get some clarification that the board didn't remove those restrictions. It was a straight review of the A&R plan to see, is there enough footage to meet the requirements on Parkerville Road, and is Parkerville Road away? But it didn't address removing any of the restrictions that had been in place before. I think in order to do that, there'd have to be a special hearing with notice and whatnot to try to remove those, which was not done. So I am trying to make this clean going forward so that we're not faced with the prospect of an argument that, well, no, the board gave permission for this residential lot to access Parkerville Road, which I don't think the board did, but it seems like it's going to come up. And I would add, we did meet with Mr. Ferris and his attorney today, and it was a productive meeting. And he was forthcoming, I think, and he said, I will work with you. Our concern, obviously, is there was a concept plan being floated around for a 4-story building on the residential lot here, with all of the trees cut out, and all of the abutters are now going to be looking at parking lot and a huge 4-story building. So everyone's concerned about that. Mr. Ferris said today he would work with us and consider other options. He didn't commit to other options, but he said he would work with us to do that. So I'm somewhat optimistic that he will do that. But our first problem is we want to make sure that those restrictions have not been removed by this board, weren't removed in the May endorsement. And that's all I'm really looking for, to get to some clarity that that was not done. Thank you.
Thank you. So in May, for the A&R, the approval not required, we just looked at frontage. There was no discussion of any other terms or restrictions, or we just looked at the frontage.
And
We endorsed the plan based on that.
okay.
Anyone else have?
No, yeah, my recollection, there was no discussion of conditions that were set on the lot currently and waiving any of those or anything. We were just looking at the lot lines, the frontage, and we split the lot. So we will not require.
All right. Thank you. That's all I needed. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ferris, did you want to speak to this at all, or?
No, I was, I think she's very addressed the questions in that up here.
Okay,
Thank you.
very good.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak to this?
We have 10 attendees in the Zoom waiting room. Mr. Jimmy Munzel has his hand raised.
Okay.
Hello, Madam Chair, Jimmy Munsell, again, 7 Schuyler Drive in Southborough. Would it be appropriate to ask that the board record these restrictions either with title or some similar mechanism so that it is kind of, broadly known? Or is that not appropriate? Thank you.
Would you like me to answer one question on that? So this was recorded. So this ZBA decision of 1990 was recorded.
Did you hear that, Mr. Munson?
So I'll say it a little louder. I believe that I have, I believe that well, I don't have a recorded copy in my hand. I would have to check if that was recorded. But that would have been a ZBA requirement or not to record that. So I don't, Brian, do you know if that document was recorded?
The special permits from 1986 and 1990 are
Recorded at the registry of deeds or recorded in the town?
registry deeds.
So
Do so.
this is something that can be checked at the Worcester Registry of Deeds to see if the special permit for 250 Turnpike from August 8th of 1990 was recorded for that location.
We can work together on that.
Would it be appropriate to ask the board that if they were not recorded, that the board would work with us to get those recorded?
If I may, it's a product of the ZBA, not the planning. The planning board should not be responsible, say it another way, for recording the ZBA's decisions.
Yeah, I think, give it a shot. All an AR does, sir, is change the lot lines. It doesn't undo any zoning, doesn't change.
As a matter of fact,
Usage,
the
nothing.
A&R plan has a note on it that indicates that. On the A&R plan is a note that says, well, let me just find it here on my screen. The planning board's endorsement of the plan is not requiring approval under the subdivision control law, is not a determination as to the conformance with the Southborough zoning bylaw and regulations. So I believe that A&R is recorded.
It is.
So that you can see on the registry of deeds. We also have an endorsed plan at the planning office, which we'd be happy to provide you if you don't have that yet.
I
think
have
we'll send that
it.
to
You
you.
give it to me.
Okay.
Karina, you're asking town council about the 2 lots.
Mhm.
Do you mind just asking him, just to confirm that the A&R has no effect on previous conditions?
And as far as recording, the planning board's jurisdiction on recording a prior document, I'm not sure.
I don't think we can, and it was issued by the zoning board of appeals before the selectmen.
And if I may, the most important point around that decision and its recording, and we spoke offline about this issue, is those conditions and those, for lack of a better term, restrictions that run with the property run concurrent with what the ZBA at the time gave you, which is a light manufacturing permit as a quid pro quo to restrict the remainder of the property while it enjoyed that benefit. That benefit has been deleted by the ZBA and the use has changed. So to talk about reissuing or re-recording, I think they could take it up with the ZBA, but typically a recording would to renew a restriction on a parcel would come with benefit.
Well, wasn't the original deed restriction prior to that being approved as a light manufacturing use? So, I mean, I don't know if that's true.
I'm sorry, Mr. Munzel, could you please repeat that?
It seemed like what I'll call, for lack of a better term, deed restriction on the residential parcel was put in place, if I'm following the chain of events correctly, prior to the use change of the office building to a light manufacturing use. So it just seems that the use would only, or the use restriction on the back parcel would only run with so long as the manufacturing operation was in process. It doesn't seem to be congruent with kind of the original intent.
I'm not sure it's a deed restriction. I think that the special permit that was issued is a special permit, and those restrictions are in that, are conditions of that special permit. So I can't speak to if it's a deed restriction or not.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I just don't have that information.
The zoning board of appeals The special permit is on what lot? It's on both?
Both.
On both.
One lot at a time. They won't split it.
So it's only on, so I think we need clarity on that, is what the special permit applies to. So if they split the lot after the special permit, is that accurate? Then we'd have to understand that, or they might need to rehear it. Because I don't think that, if that's not, I don't think that's in really good faith.
I think that's worth asking town council about as part of the whole question of the lots of the previous agenda item. This is relevant to that too.
So just to be clear, you're asking town council if the special permit that was issued for the entire lot prior to the A&R affects either one of the lots that was created by the A&R.
Well, the decision was made before an A&R. So I don't think it's in, like, I just don't think that the special permit, I would not say that's consistent with what the property is now. It's now two parcels. We have one site plan in front of us. And I think that's what we need to evaluate. What is the special permit actually applicable to?
Okay.
Because I just don't think that's in good faith if the special permit was granted and then an A&R and you've split two lots.
And I'm not an attorney,
That's.
but I thought that a special permit runs with the use and a variance runs with the land, and I could be wrong.
That's the correct legal interpretation from outside, independent of our attorney's in-house view. The land use expert would say the same thing. So I'm confident if you take the question back, they'll give you the answer that you need.
And the planning board is asking for me to ask that regarding the project that is currently under site plan, that lot, if that's impacted.
Right, because the special permit that was on the leaf thing was very specific about the residential A lot. That no building shall be built and no egress.
Right, and if this is a special permit and not a variance, and I think there's a little confusion there because there may have been a typo in the decision because they titled it variance, but the vote is a special permit. Okay. That will include that in town council.
Good question.
Yes, sir.
So along with it, I assume then, all along, Mr. Ferris's point, just for confirmation, because I'm not saying either, to ask whether or not the special permit follows the use versus the land. I mean, I appreciate the commentary, but again, I'm no attorney, so asking, I assume that would be a potential question for town council as well to confirm that documentation is to follow the use or does it follow the land? Thank you.
Does the planning board agree for me to include that in the legal opinion request? Yeah.
And if I may add, was that special permit approval of a special permit or a variance, because it does say both. So we need clarification there as well.
Okay, I can, all right, I'll ask that. The language in the special permit in this document refers to that granting the following restrictions, the special permit. But we can get confirmation.
Decision on a petition.
Right. Okay. Any more questions? Let me just look in the Zoom room to make sure. So we currently have 11 attendees, no hands raised. Okay.
All right. So we have all those 500 questions for town council. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a discussion of 154 Turnpike Road site compliance. Thank you. Scenic Road Tour.
Madam Chair, could we take a 2-minute recess?
Make a motion for a 2-minute recess?
Second.
All in favor, Latrell, yes.
Yes, yes.
Stein, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Yeah, 2 minutes. Colleen, can you use that? Can we come?
Can you get downstairs?
Yeah. Go like that.
There.
Very well.
We all voted.
Just any.
And it stops recording. I have to stop recording.
No, just any meeting in Zoom.
Yeah.
And everything. So, okay,
Are we back?
you're back.
We are back in session.
The owl's not showing a, Colleen, the owl's not showing a picture. Okay.
No, I don't have it. I don't have it. Yeah, Colleen, the owl is not showing the picture. I'm sorry.
Doesn't need to be.
Oh, I turned on the video. Sorry, that was me. I turned it off.
There
There we are. All right, now we're really back. 154 Turnpike Road, site compliance, scenic road tree removal.
Yes, so just to update you, at the prior meetings, Bill DePietri and Justin DePietri representing Capital Properties was asked to submit applications to modify the site plan at 154 Turnpike in order to mitigate the changes in landscaping that they've done and also are proposing. In addition, they've been asked to submit an application for scenic road tree removal for a tree that was removed in order to mitigate that process as well. So I reached out to them on October 12th, and they sent me an email today saying that they are in the process of getting the documents together as requested. That the vendors are a little bit busy and it's taking time to get everything together. So it's going to be at least a month before they try to get things together, because things are happening for them closing up for the winter month. So I'll be on them to make sure that they follow up within a month. I did let them know that planning board is not in favor of delays, and that if it takes too long, that there's consideration to ask the building commissioner to issue a letter and start that process. That could incur fines if it goes to that level. So they are aware of that. But when I did speak with Mr. Bill DePietri this morning, Justin DePietri responded to me within probably a half hour, following up with me to let you guys know.
So in a month, they're going to file an application for site plan modification.
Well, actually, it says we are in the process of getting the documents together as requested. For the last meeting, we attended we pushed to get the original requested documents ASAP as requested. For the last meeting we attended, those were not enough. Now, photometric plan and plan for site plan amendment have been additionally requested. All the vendors we use are very busy and will take some time to get everything together. I don't see us having everything for at least a month, where everyone is trying to close out jobs before the winter months. It is in progress on our end, and we will keep you posted. Justin DePietri. So it's up to the board if they want to give them one more month, or if there's other action.
Mr. Knight?
I'm just curious, I mean, they're gonna be out of compliance now until the spring. Is what it's gonna boil down to. Because they're like, we don't have a plan, we're not gonna have new things, new plantings. Whatever the remedy is gonna be, I mean, nothing's gonna happen until spring at this point. So,
Even with a modification
Yeah.
application, it would still be over the winter months. So it would be the same kind of thing.
I'm sure even, well, I don't know, but even raising the curb and the other items we asked for, probably gonna be, ground's gonna be frozen by the time it's in the plan and everything else, so nothing's gonna happen. So I guess we talking to the building inspector, like, okay, we're working with them, but they're gonna be out of compliance. Well, I've never come across this before. We started this how long ago?
2019. 18, well, they were asked to bring that curbing into compliance, and then they were going to remedy with additional buffer and bring that curb back and do all those things. So
We'll replant at that.
Yeah.
Cut through with it.
I can tell you that when I speak with Bill DePietri, he is responsive as far as, you know, answering me back and getting things. We have other projects that are lingering as well, like Stonebrook Village. As folks there that they need to provide, and I'm working on them with that. But it's up to the board if they want further action. I can recall the prior letter that was sent. I can pull that out of the file and remind the building commissioner.
I mean, I guess as long as progress is actually happening, but if we don't see anything, and I would reach out to the building inspector and say, hey, you know, at this point, what do you recommend? I'd ask for her input too.
Okay.
I mean, if we keep seeing progress happening,
Mhm.
but reality is there's going to be no new planting until the spring season. In my view. 'Cause I'm not gonna make it. I don't even think there are no plants. I mean, shrubs and trees, it's already having their annual sale.
Mr. Stein?
I think we're way past the point of required mitigation. As far as the tree goes, and as far as the site plan being out of compliance, we've also been, in my opinion, far beyond the lenience that I would be in favor of. So mitigation and referring it to the building inspector, and just philosophically, I tend to be less lenient and more on the enforcement side of the board's, you know, previous rulings. I mean, we spent a ton of time on these site plans, and then to have the lack of compliance to me is just ridiculous. So.
And just to add, I just want to say that it was the last meeting that we asked them to do modification, or the planning board requested it. So that was 2 weeks ago.
I don't think we ever asked for it. I think it was obvious that they weren't gonna put all
Exactly.
the trees in it. We didn't ask for it.
I was
No, I meant that
mystified.
was the mitigation agreed to, that they would, despite the changes, that they would submit applications for modification.
I think it is incredibly generous and gracious of this board to have discussion items on our agenda that are obviously, you know, site plan modifications. To me, it's a waste of the board's time to even engage in those discussions. It's either it is the site plan or it is not. If it's not the site plan, we should be doing a proper submission of a modification.
Yeah,
Don't
the
take
problem-
up my time with these discussion items.
The problem was that the work was performed, and it was
Well, that's
came
out
to
of
the
compliance.
attention.
That's,
So we called them in. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm just saying that the circumstances and that, you know, they had ideas that they wanted to do and then they never applied. They actually reconstructed things on the site that were not compliant. And it
And
was
they
brought
went
to the
and
attention.
did even more. They cut down all the trees.
Yeah,
I mean,
so the planning board just has to tell me what they want me to do, and that's what I will do.
So Jesse, you would like to engage the building commissioner?
yes, please.
Mrs. Moore.
I concur with Mr. Stein. I think this board has been overly lenient and generous with our time in discussing this. I think they were given a plan and they just decided to violate the plan. And I think they should be fined daily, but I'll leave that for the building inspector.
Mr. Moore.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's time for enforcement and to engage the building inspector.
Looks like enforcement wins.
Okay, and in doing so, I can write a letter requesting that non-compliance issue, that there's some enforcement process or next step that she takes. I don't know if we have, you know, beyond that, what can we do except
Whatever.
encourage and request that that happens.
Well, I would point out the 2019 letter in which she sent an enforcement letter for them to return that cut through.
Yeah.
And I was told that they would do it in the spring,
Okay.
so which would have been 2020. And this is 2023. And in addition, the introduction of landscaping, which makes the site. And the light, the change in lighting.
I will circulate the letter so that you can see that you have any comment.
Okay, next item on the agenda, discussion item 325, Turnpike Road, Ken's Food, status of noise barrier wall, and drainage landscaping repairs.
Just for the record, it appears Mr. Mary is recusing himself.
Yes.
You don't have to sit there, yeah, you can sit up.
It looks like people printed them out already. or using them already.
Yeah, we just did. Okay. If the town gets me a cruiser, I'll go up and do some enforcement.
You're hired.
An electric, a plug-in,
Just nothing with a standard shift, so that they can't shift to my cruiser. Okay, quick update for the planning board. As you recall, when major site plan approval was decided upon several months ago for 325 Turnpike Ken's Foods for a building expansion on the east side, the decision included conditions of approval, which were relative to drainage repairs that were required. Drainage repairs that were required from the prior site plan approval. In addition, there were three of them. In addition, there were landscaping fixes also that are required to be performed prior to the building expansion project starting. I'm just looking for the decision. So in the decision, there was a condition number 6, existing drainage and stormwater management system repairs, which required 3 drainage fixes on the site. There were 2 outlet control structures that needed to have the elevation repaired in order for the system to operate as designed. And then there was a gravity line that was built over a gas line that caused a
High point.
a high point. Thank you, Scott. So the other condition was number 13, repair and completion of plantings for prior permits, which included 2 trees at the sound barrier wall, replacement plantings at the warehouse renovation bio retention area, and then replacement wetland replication plantings where the septic system was installed previously under prior permits. Then also there was a condition number 14, which was relative to a sound barrier wall that was supposed to be determined via work between Ken's Foods noise expert and the abutters noise expert, and they were to come to a consensus in September 13th or so. I believe the Board of Health had a meeting and an option was determined to be the best path, which was not a short wall and not the long perimeter wall, but a shortened perimeter wall. And the requirement was for Ken's Foods to come back within 90 days with a modification to site plan with this noise barrier wall design. So we received a request from Mr. Pizzoni on, for his client Ken Spoo's, a letter which was provided to the planning board indicating requesting an extension to the time frame of the condition for the noise barrier wall. I believe you're asking for a 30-day extension.
Yes.
And then I can tell you that 2 of the 3 drainage fixes were done, were constructed. Fuss and O'Neill was engaged. They went to the site and they inspected those, and we have reports on that. At this point, as far as what they witnessed in the field is satisfactory, but part of the requirement is that we need as-built of those, stamped and then reviewed by Fuss and O'Neill to confirm that what you're showing on the as-built is. There's a third drainage, there's an issue, the third drainage location because there's a national grid pole. The pole is in close proximity, I would say what, 6 feet?
Yeah.
Approximately that range, and the foundation would be the pole, it's a national grid pole, provides power to Kent's Blues. If they dig near that, they ask National Grid to shore it up. And I'll let you explain the rest of that part. And then the landscaping, I'm not sure what the status is of that at this point because Fuss and O'Neill has not been out there to review any of the landscaping fixes.
Do you want to just hit on the landscape?
Sure, yeah,
So-
I will do that.
Let me just pass the.
Sure, whatever,
Back to
whatever
you.
order you'd like to go.
So that's the update. We have a requesting for some things that are conditioned in the major site plan approval. There are also conditions as part of the special permit.
If we can proceed with the work that needs to be done, we'll talk about the sound wall second
Okay.
and talk about the work that needed to be completed before Ken's could start the foundation work for the expansion and the other work for the expansion. And as Karina stated, they've done 2 parts of it. The one part that they haven't completed is because of the pole being next to where the drain line is going to go. And we've been trying to get Eversource out there for a month now,
Oh, more than that.
a couple of months. Yeah, well, that's right. This was July.
Yeah,
So once we got the approval, we had got in touch with them to come out to do it. They keep putting you off, putting you off. We can't get them out. We've taken another position and gone to the gas company to see if they could move the line so that we could then get under it. And that way we wouldn't have to hold the pole. Because what happens is Eversource has to come out and hold on to that pole. So whoever can come out first, the gas company or Eversource, we'll get it done after they complete that. But we can't, our hands are tied. We can't do anything unless, and I think in good faith, Ken says move forward with getting all the other work done quickly, get everybody out there, check everything out. He's got to submit the plans. He'll submit them for that, the parts that are completed.
I have, just.
Yeah, okay, you haven't done it.
But that's,
Well, they're
that's an
not
interim.
as-built, they're
But that's
just
an
sketches
interim.
right now.
No, it's an as-built. But
Stamped?
yes, it is by, yeah.
So
But only those 2 repairs.
in that regard, we'd like to be able to commence construction on the addition while we're waiting on Eversource and not have to be delayed and possibly get pushed into next spring to start construction on that. Because if we don't get in the ground to do the work that needs to be done on the ground, we're not going to make it through the winter.
So is the plan on the screen, the plan you're talking about, Scott, that's stamped?
Yeah, the as-built, the surveyor stamping, the as-built is the work that's marked up in red and blue. Showing that the construction of the inverts and the size of the openings and such are all in compliance.
So the next step, for at least these 2 drainage features fixes would be for this plan to be submitted to Fuss and O'Neill for review. And under the task force authorization that we currently have for construction-based services. And see what, if they have any comments on the design, since they inspected it and here's the as-built. Does this say as-built on there somewhere?
Right above the stand.
Above the steel? So that would be the next step for this plan, but you still have an issue because you have the third drainage.
Yeah, and it's the work for the third drainage that's holding us up. And we feel it's unfair to be hamstrung through the winter and not to be able to start our foundation work before the winter comes, to be able to start building that if Eversource can't get out there. And that's why we took the course and went to the gas company as well, figuring if we had two companies, one of them would get out there sooner than later.
In the landscaping?
The landscaping is proceeding right now. It's not completed yet. All of the prep site work was done, the soil, the new soils brought in. Some plant material has been delivered, and I did not get a report today, and I haven't been out there since last week, but the landscape, the wetlands engineer and landscape folks from Goddard have been out there monitoring on a regular basis, and expect completion of that very soon.
So the landscaping is it?
No, it's not completed yet.
Mr. Rose? Mr. Stone?
No questions.
Ms. Woodman?
Just the specific ask. So your ask this evening of the planning board is,
That we can commence construction of the addition, because we have to get things in the ground for the winter. And to put them online now to start construction, it's probably, we'll probably just be able to make it. We'll probably get into November and be able to start infusing into the ground what we have to do to build. Once we get everything into the ground, we'll be all set to finish the top. But if we can't get in, it'll push us off 6 months. We won't get in until spring.
so the timing on the updated landscape plan would be,
A matter of a few weeks, I would say, to have because the surveyor is following them as they do the work. And it's all been being pushed and expedited. So that's encouraging, I think, in terms of having that done in the next few weeks, because was well underway already last week, so.
Mr. Charles, when did we, because it's always our Dropbox a little hard to follow when you try and look back on the
Yes.
conditions.
Yeah.
The specific conditions that we had, they had to come back to make sure they got the 3 things, the pipes done, the landscaping done, and the perimeter wall, like that was part of the component design.
30 days.
Right, so the decision of major site plan approval was issued,
I just need the date.
was granted at the planning board. Hold on, I can tell you exactly.
July 1st.
July.
Okay, so July, so.
It was received by the clerk on July 1st, 20 days ran.
27th.
No,
21st.
yeah, okay, no, at its meeting on June 27th, 2022, the planning board voted to grant the major site plan approval, so June 27th.
Yeah, but your decision went into the planning board July 1st. It didn't become effective until after the 20 days. So that's July 20th.
Right, but you knew you had to do, I understand.
Yeah, no, I know,
So
but we
July
had
1st.
started the work anyhow.
Yeah, so you're right, July 1st is when it was
Right.
signed. But, that work was also part of the prior site.
I understand, yeah,
So,
but we couldn't start it until, remember, we had to wrap it all back into this one. Yeah, so that it would get done and we weren't going back to the old
right,
plans,
which
right?
it was,
Right.
July 1st.
And
So,
And the specific work that needs to be done, get going this fall is what Ken hopes to do this fall, is specifically the perimeter fire protection service that goes around. It has to be extended around the area where the expansion will be before the expansion work can get done. So that's the first step. And then the foundation work per se isn't what you call traditional foundation work. It's an aggregate material that is
driven into the ground to create strong soil. So we don't have a lot of excavation to do, quite frankly. It's,
So you wouldn't be starting any of the new drainage
no, we would,
construction? And
no,
you can't actually, because you have to satisfy the condition, but
yeah.
the problem with the gravity line over the gas, how does that impact the current system?
Considering we're in a current situation where it seems to be, we've been doing some test pits because we want to make sure we're not running into any conflicts again.
Well, I
So
think
we've been
it's
seeing,
reducing the
so we can,
capacity of
so
the
we can,
system, right?
so what I'm getting to is the point is the groundwater is very low right now.
Mhm.
It's been, call it good or bad, depending on what you think about water these days, right? It's very low. And so really that high point doesn't really have an issue in terms of a backup into the system right now. I'm predicting that based on what I saw in the test pit last week. That being said, you're absolutely correct. We wouldn't proceed with the construction of the underground detention system expansion until that kink in the pipe, the vertical kink in the pipe is fixed.
But for the landscaping, there's nothing stopping you from putting the
No,
landscape.
No, the
they're
landscape is
working on it.
underway.
Yeah,
Of course, the final landscaping for the enhanced buffer zones and such like that should be after the initial work is done. So then that perimeter work can be done.
right.
So that's not being done, but all the restoration work, remediation work,
The three fixes.
the three planting fixes, right? We have to have 3 planting fixes also. Those are underway and should be completed. I wouldn't be surprised if they're completed this week or early the following.
So we have a planning board meeting on November 7th. So as far as the landscaping, my thought is this, the drainage, there's nothing they can do at this point, because I asked them if they could move the pole. It's the same deal with National Grid. I asked them if they could redesign the fix so that they wouldn't be near the pole. And that's a time factor as well, and if the materials are available, etc. You'd have to design it, get the design approved, get Fuss and O'Neill out there to look at it, install it, whatever order you supply. So I asked them several different ways to approach that, and that's the difficult one. The landscaping should be done. And as far as the noise barrier, well, you don't have much choice.
No, and I'll address that, why we're
Because
even
the
here.
deadline is October 20th for them to have a modification application in the design. So the landscaping at least should be completed. Is my opinion, before any building expansion.
If I may point out, the request for National Grid, you had the 2 companies mixed, by the way, Bill.
Yeah, all right.
The National Grid, in this case, National Grid's the electric and Eversource is the gas company. I believe I'm correct on that. I'm not 100% sure. That, because they both serve both, as you know, in town. That request for National Grid to secure that pole so the work could be done was the first thing that was done in the job in July. That's how long it's been. It was that request has been in there for a while.
Oh, and the other option was to have.
It's not like we've
the
been
gas
delaying
company
that, is the
come
point I
out
want to make.
and reroute their line. So there were 4 different avenues and all were.
So does Fuss and O'Neill will need to review the 2 that were done
Yes.
to confirm that those were?
Yes,
Can
they did inspect the site and the reports back during construction were good. But it's still a requirement that the as-built be
Yeah, they have to
reviewed by
look at the
Fuss.
plan.
Can they do that in 2 weeks?
I can ask them. They already have a task authorization to do the work.
Okay, good.
My guess is it's likely because it's not, they were in the field and it's not a big set of plans. It's very fundamental.
Okay, so my opinion is that third outlet structure, you kind of at somebody else's mercy. The landscaping should have been done. So I would see if Fuss and O'Neill can review this prior to our next meeting, and we have the landscaping done prior to our next meeting. And then, And then
As far as those
decide
fixes.
on whether you can start with the fire structure. and that.
Could we have a vote on it contingent that we complete those two things? If Fuss O'Neill reviews it and we complete the landscaping, because I can't come back on the 7th. I'm unavailable and I don't want to have to be here for, to present
You
again.
don't want to be here?
Oh, hey, I would have loved it tonight, except for that first 2 hours.
Can I ask a question? Why would you need to be here? Why can't we review the situation with Mr.
Well, you
Doherty
could,
then?
you could,
And
but
then
I
take up the matter
requested
at
that I do this one by Zoom, and Karina said, you might want to be here, and I agree with her, I should be
Oh, I
here.
always recommend in person.
Yeah,
It's
and I
better.
don't mind that, but as long as you don't mind that I don't physically appear, as long as those two things are done.
I think it's pretty straightforward, personally.
Yeah, if those two things are done, you'll give us what we requested on the construction. Correct? Okay,
The mitigation.
Just to be clear, would you like to move forward on the construction?
we want to move forward on the construction of the petition, and most of it will be the foundation work and all the infusion into the ground. We won't do any of the drainage related to it because we can't. It'll be middle of winter.
So it wasn't some fire road or something?
The
Yeah.
fire, the pipes, the water service for the fire protection system needs to be rebuilt around the expansion area primarily.
That and the foundation,
That and it's the aggregate foundation. It gets driven into the ground.
the aggregate foundation. So
So
if Fuss and O'Neill.
The interesting thing, actually. So,
But once that happens, I mean, it's just gonna keep going, right?
We'd like to, yeah.
well,
Assuming they can get that third.
I guess the expectation is that one of the Eversource and National Grid in the meantime
We'll get out there
come through for us.
before we get to the stage above foundation.
see, I think that when I spoke to the contractor, he requested the fire access road, the water line. I'm not sure there was any discussion of the foundation. It was.
Yeah, well, we have to do
around
that.
Where the building was.
Yeah, we
going.
have to do that before the ground freezes. That's Sam wanted that, right?
Yeah, that's right. He wants to do it before those conditions.
All there.
They do is part of that process, they clear that area, they put down stone to stabilize it, so it doesn't have to be a exposed soil area, it's processed stone, it's exposed. And then they work in the specific area where they push down the aggregate.
Just to be very clear,
It's pretty interesting.
the site super, Michael Zanni, sent me, I'm following up on this email. We are expecting the water pipe in a few weeks and are looking to proceed once the new water pipe is in hand. This is the new water line around the site underneath the fire department access road. Installation of erosion control for phase 3, tree removal and stump grinding, land clearing and grading. Previously, he also said in an email to me, we are requesting permission to start the following. Fire department access road around the proposed expansion. We'd like to start this as soon as we're able to, as the current access road runs through the footprint of the expansion. Our goal is to run the new fire water service, which is approximately 1,100 linear feet of new 8-inch water under the access road, backfill to grade and install binder before the Thanksgiving. After Thanksgiving, it becomes very difficult to get asphalt binder and create a sturdy road. Number 2, set up erosion control for phase 3 building expansion. This includes all temporary soil stockpile areas designated on the plan. Number 3, tree removal and stump grinding as designated on the plan for the back parking lot. Number 4, land clearing and grading of the proposed building footprint. And it's when I received these emails that I indicated to them that they cannot continue, they hadn't satisfied. The 3 drainage fixes and the 3 landscaping fixes. Bill, were there any other conditions that were related to prior to the building expansion happening?
No, it was just,
I don't believe so.
just those,
It was
yeah.
just those mitigations. So what you're telling us is that if the planning board says, okay, you can start construction, you're just gonna keep going? Unless the planning board conditions that you can only do these 3 things until the national grid, until drainage is satisfied.
Well, I talked to the contractor, not the site guy. the contractor that runs the company. And he told me today they want to be able to do the foundation and the infusion and everything so that they're above ground.
Well, he
And that
didn't
way, if
relay that
National
to
Grid
us.
comes, then they can move forward afterwards.
But I just, in all
No,
clarity.
no,
that
I'll fairness,
Sam
I'll have
Vittori did not
the
express that.
construction guy write a letter on everything that they want, and you'll have it for the next meeting.
It's Mike is the
guy that's on this.
Yeah, but he works directly for Sam.
Well, Sam told me this morning.
Yeah.
Let me just be clear so the planning board understands. Mike Zani is the site superintendent.
Yeah.
He's on the site all the time. He's the contact person for emergency. He works for Columbia Construction. His boss, Sam Vittori,
Right.
is the point of contact at the top of the food chain.
That's
So,
correct.
Sam's the guy I spoke to.
But Mike is the one corresponding with
Okay.
planning department, and Sam is as well. He follows up, and is that okay, Bob? But
Can
I
you
just
see
wanted
if Sam is on Zoom with you guys right now?
to look.
Is he Vittori?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, he's got his hand up, right? He wants us to stop, he wants to talk.
Yeah. Good thing I
I
thought.
probably got 10 texts from him, probably.
I shut my phone off, so I didn't hear anything.
No, yeah, he's got something about planning completion,
So,
Mr. Vittori?
about a week away, yeah.
Good evening.
Hello.
We can hear you,
Ladies and
Sam.
gentlemen, how are you? Can you all hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, the things that Karina listed off are all correct. And Mike has them in the right order. Before the winter, before Christmas, we want to do the water line is the fire line, the roadway for the fire department, the rammed aggregate piers, which support the foundation and the foundation, period. Then steel doesn't come for the job until the end of February. So the next step would be steel. And Scott is then correct in saying that between now and before we would put steel up, we are very hopeful that we get some positive response from either Eversource or Engrid to either relocate the pole for us or lower the gas line for us, because we need somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 12 inches to pass over the gas line, which gives us the proper pitch that Scott needs for his design. But we will not, absolutely, and Karina is correct in saying, we will absolutely not do any additional drainage work, not tie in any other drainage until that repair is made. Additionally, the as-bills were done for the 2 of the 3 repairs, and they're ready, and we should be sending them out first thing tomorrow morning to Fuss and O'Neill to review. But my understanding is that we are absolutely right on the money with all the corrections that we've made.
just note that I got them this afternoon.
So that's, in a nutshell, that's exactly what we want to do. We're gonna put the rammed aggregate piers, what Scott refers to is the stone that is rammed into the ground to make the ground support the foundation. The foundation is a 4-foot frost wall foundation to support the building. And then we are stopping for the winter. That's as far as we can go.
So water line, roadway, aggregate piers, and the foundation.
Yes, ma'am.
Fire suppression too.
Is that the water line?
Yeah.
That's the
And
water
Mike,
line.
as Mike pointed out, the erosion control system in place.
Yeah, and the erosion control has to be done as a prerequisite before we dig in the dirt, period. So that's a necessity that, you know, that's technically our first step, right?
Right.
Can I just get clarity on the gas and electric situation? So considering you asked in July, when's the last possible date that they can come out and you can actually do this repair work on the drainage system?
Well, it depends who wants to come first. And it depends when the frost goes into the ground. So what happened and what specifically the issue is that the pole was only, when the pole was originally installed, it was only installed 6 feet in the ground. If it were much deeper, we'd have a better chance. And typically what Scott's saying is correct. They would grab the pole, support it for us while we excavated next to it, installed our structures, backfilled and be on our way. But it's only buried in the ground 6 feet. So they said, no, we're not going to relocate it. Or we're not going to hold it for you. We would need to relocate and we'll look at our design and we'll let you know. So that's when, as Scott stated, we said, well, wait a minute, let's hedge our bet. And let's also talk to the gas company because maybe they can respond sooner, drop this gas line for us, the 8 to 12 inches that we need, which then would allow us to give the proper pitch to the drain line that we need. And the design is then fulfilled.
So neither can be done once there's frost.
Yeah, you can't take, once there's frost, we can't, they won't let us dig up, they won't let us do anything there. They'll tell us to go away until spring. I mean, it's possible, Ms. Luttrell, anything is possible, but depending on if there's enough frost in the ground, but we'll do it anytime. If they say they're gonna come out and do it, we'll accommodate them, trust me. We're not gonna tell them no, but my belief is that once it gets to be a certain time of year, they will only come out on an emergency basis. They won't come out just to do what's elective work in their opinion.
Sam, didn't they tell you already that they're not gonna do it before spring?
We believe that based on what I said, Karina, before, we believe that they would not come out based on working with them before. I mean, I've waited, most recently, I've waited almost a year for a gas line to be relocated in Waltham. So we're hopeful now that, things would go a lot better.
They realize it's not on Route 9, right?
I'm sorry?
They realize that the pole is not on Route 9 when you put your address. It is internal to the private property.
Yes, I'm aware of that, but it's still.
They are aware.
Yes. Yeah, it's the pole, it's the last pole that before the feed goes into the transformer on the south west corner of the building.
Sometimes they stall, they have to do the traffic setup, and they 2 miles advance signing, cities. But that's not the.
I mean, if I knocked it down, they would probably repair it for me, but I don't, that's kind of drastic.
Maybe we get one of those trucks right into it.
No, the
Yeah.
electricity for the building comes from that.
Right, so,
We still need that third mitigation complete from the original plan. And so they can't build infrastructure. If the steel comes in February, it sits there until that third drain gets repaired, period. And so
yeah,
that.
what we would like to say is that we can't do any drainage work until we can tie into the system. We can't tie into the system until the repair is made. So we're not going to do any drainage work, and therefore we're not going to until the drainage is done, period.
Condition is also no building expansion work till those are done. So it's already like leaning into, all right, it's not just the drainage, it's the building expansion.
Understand that the only drainage that goes into this new expansion of the underground system is the roof drainage. So
Right.
Right,
until,
but the condition is. the
right, I just
condition, and the
want to
condition was
I
kind of-
understand, I just,
it
yeah.
wasn't done in the first place.
Correct.
So it's like it was supposed to
Right.
be
Yeah.
penance. I don't know how else to put it. So
So would the board be okay with those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that they can move forward with, waiting for National Grid, contingent upon Fuss and O'Neill signing off on this aspect and the landscaping being done by our next meeting?
I would be knowing how they've proactively coming in, asking for it, and the progress they've made with the retaining wall, which I didn't think they were gonna get this far to begin with, as far as they have gotten. So I would be very comfortable.
Agreed.
Agreed.
November 7th,
November
so
7th.
the landscaping,
Okay, we'll make sure they're,
and I'll get this to Fuss and O'Neill tomorrow morning.
okay,
And
Ideally 7 days before that.
yeah, ideally.
is it the 7th or the 11th? I'm sorry.
Seventh.
7th.
November 7th.
building on what I was saying too, like the 30-day extension for finish the plans for the sound wall, I'd be in favor of doing it.
If I could just elaborate on that and ask,
Just before you
If you
continue,
must.
just know that if,
Came all the way here.
after November 7th, the next meeting is November 21st.
okay, all right. Okay, as you know, when we went to the Board of Health, the last meeting, and you guys gave a recommendation that you wanted the longer wall rather than the one in the interior, and we acquiesced to it, which was fine. But then when we looked at the plans, because we hadn't really looked at the wetlands that closely, because we were anticipating that the one closer to the building was better. When we went out there and we looked at where the design and the layout would be, we'd actually be in the wetlands in several areas, not in the buffer, not in the 100-foot setback, but in the wetlands. So what we did was we made some modifications to angle around the wetlands, to come down and come in front of it, and then run in front of it along the roadway. If you go out there, the shoulder off the side of the road in between the wetlands, there's enough room to build it there. When we did the sound modeling though, to check to make sure that what we were anticipating we wanted to do because of the wetlands, the experts redid it and they communicated last week that we added an extra section on the northernmost end
Actually, 20
of
feet.
the wall. It's 20 feet, 20 feet more to make sure we get the same effect or similar effect to what we had before. And the other component of it is, once it's up, we got to run testing anyhow to make sure it works. So we may be tweaking it again then, who knows? So we need about 30 days, I think, Scott. is that
Right, I think because we need a plan that will be submitted both to the board and to the commission, Conservation Commission also. The Conservation Commission is really the longer preparation period. For the issue
And
related to, the wetland areas.
Yeah, we knew once we looked at it, if we went into conservation with the original plan, they weren't going to approve it. So we got proactive and we made the design, made the changes. They ran a lot of testing over several weeks, and the sound engineers got together last week to look at it and run some final specs. And this works. There's one area, the little finger of wetland there, where the original one was and this one was, but we can bridge it. The 20-foot spans, we'll put a foundation on either side of it, and it won't be in the wetlands. So this has a much higher potential success rate in conservation.
Do you
Sorry.
do you have a document that both noise experts agreed to these changes? They both signed off on this plan?
Oh, from the experts?
Yeah. Like the change.
I've been an email that I can send you that they sent me on Friday. It was between them, confirming that this new model with the extension at the southern end gives you effectively the same
So
results.
just so the planning board is very aware, the blue line, right, on the screen there.
Yep,
um,
that's the old one.
The one is just straight and then
yes,
curves,
yeah.
yeah.
Except in the Board of Health report, in the noise report, I think the wall already did this. So that's why I was asking you why you think this is a change. The wall didn't go straight, it was,
I'd have to go back and look at it.
and I can show
The
you.
first version that you provided me had it going into the wetlands, so we may have made that change early on. You might be right on that.
You might be right.
The change might have only, the change that's, the official change may have only been the north end,
Okay, I got it here.
but from my standpoint. well,
Karina's rarely wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, no, figure 17.
She's-
Figure 17 shows it kind of angling the way we have it now. Yeah,
All right.
so that,
Wait,
that
so
line
this
can
is
be,
the wrong-
So we already had taken care of that.
right,
Okay,
Oh, yeah, okay, so this is the shortened.
thank
wall.
you.
right.
Yeah.
That's exhibit figure 17.
All right.
Right, so you already had that curve in there.
Right,
You changed
The
the
other side.
northern side
right.
to go along the road,
Yeah,
which is reflected in your.
yeah, the change I was trying to get him to do is then push
I
that
just
out.
wanted to make sure the planning
We
board
came
was
inside
aware
instead.
of what is coming. Okay.
Okay, and this is for submittal, because we won't be back to see you before the 21st on the sound wall.
This is
The 30 days I'm asking for is just to submit it to you.
to get the application
Yeah,
in
get the
for
application,
review,
yeah.
for completeness, and then
Yeah.
if it's all in order, And before you make the copies, you might want to just come by my office and look at one set. And we'll go through it, make sure everything's in it.
Yeah.
And then it'd be good to submit officially all the documents. And
Okay.
Yeah, and fortunately, it's not really changing sort of layout, anything on the site plan, nor is it changing drainage at all. So
so if there's a modification application form.
Yeah.
And the process is similar.
would this be considered a minor modification from a site plan standpoint, even though it's a vertical element?
No, a modification based on something during construction which you're in is the same application as if when you originally applied.
Okay.
So it's a modification to a major site plan. You already have a major site plan, so
Right.
it's a modification. to-
Which
Right.
requires us
This
to
requires
file.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Moore,
I have no question.
Mrs. Dunn,
No questions.
Mr. Murray, is your recollection the same as what was presented?
See, we need, the planning board doesn't need to vote, this is an agreement that this is an extension. We have a 30-day
Extension to submit,
extension,
whatever.
which is from October 30th to November 30th. Right, so the new deadline was
Well,
October
actually,
20th.
would have been the 20th, yeah, that's why I wanted to get in this week.
20th.
Right.
And just so it's clear that we have a date of,
I got it 30 days, is 11/20. Well, actually, because that's a Sunday,
so November 21st,
21st.
which is a planning board meeting.
Right, well, we're gonna try to get it to you as soon as we can.
Make a motion, Madam Chair, that we extend the submittal period for the sound wall for Ken's Food an extra 30 days. Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor, Latrell, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Hey, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Sam.
You really didn't think we had the sound wall back?
He was right. We didn't make the submittal.
No, we didn't make it.
You guys made a lot of good progress.
Yeah,
Very
yeah, this
impressive.
is a very-
Good partnership.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we just want to get the building up to pay for it all.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Bye, thanks.
Master Plan Implementation Committee, I think we just need to appoint someone to the committee.
Yes.
Just mixing it up a little bit. I'd like to make a motion that the planning board appoint William B. Warren to the master plan implementation committee per Mr. Warren's submitted request.
Second,
I have a motion in a second. Any discussion? All in favor, Latrell, yes?
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Mary, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Warren.
We
Thank
did
you,
send
Mr.
in the
Warren.
Thank you
agenda,
for your
but so we
service.
didn't have to attend.
Okay. The next discussion item, process for proposed Hopkinton water connecting to MWRA through Southborough. I just had a question for the board, and I don't know if we have any role in this, and that's what my question is. Originally on June 14th, Hopkinton came before the select board asking to connect to MWRA through Hopkinton. I mean, through Southborough. And the select board at that time agreed the process would be that the Public Works Planning Board will review it in public open meetings and make a recommendation back to the select board. Since that time, somehow the process has been removed from a public process and it has been brought behind closed doors, and public, somebody who's not with a town entity has been assigned the duty of reviewing this.
How did this happen?
I'm not quite sure. And when it was presented at the select board meeting, public comment was shut down. So as a,
Sorry, this town select board?
yes, So as a appointing authority on the Public Works Planning Board, I'm wondering if we have jurisdiction to comment on this process or not. That's my question. That's why this discussion is.
I would think we have authority to comment on the process, yeah. It should be public.
I'm
Yeah.
completely mystified as to how we got to this point.
I-
Logistically, it just doesn't seem like the proper procedures were followed. in the project. I would love to hear an explanation as to how we got here in the select board. Sorry.
So should we write a letter to the select board and ask that it to move back to the public process that was approved on June 14th?
Yes.
Has some decision been rendered?
A decision, as far as I know, has not been rendered.
Okay, yeah, I personally think we should intervene. This should absolutely, this is a very controversial situation with our water situation. I think it's a really important public hearing process.
Yeah, I have a neighbor who's just concerned about the pipe being widened on Latticeforma Road, so the golf course can get more water, and she's worried about her water pressure. So I can't imagine what this could do. So, yeah, totally agree.
So this is a public hearing process through the select board?
No, it's the Public Works Planning Board, and they did have one meeting, a joint meeting with Capital
Yeah,
to start the discussions and lay out a path forward, and
I was
the
saying,
rug was pulled out from under them.
yeah, interestingly, the chair of the Public Works Planning Board thought this was an issue that should go to the Public Works Planning Board for the public. And so there was a joint meeting with capital planning, one, and then there was seeking some clarification after they found out that there was an appointee, that the process seemed to be kind of a little unclear. So the chairs of the two committees, Public Works Planning Board and Capital Planning, wrote a letter to the select board for some clarification as to why it wasn't with them. It seemed to have not been with them, and what happened, I don't really know, but I would just say both chairs felt that it should be public process, and they were willing to have joint meetings. That's good. I mean, you know, so
Both chairs of,
Public Works Planning Board and Capital Planning Committee, because of
Okay.
capital expense.
but it seemed, if I'm hearing correctly, the select board took it away from those two boards, contrary to what was agreed upon.
I don't know about took it away, but I would say that's what happened. And there was,
Or did the DPW essentially take the project
no,
away from?
no,
Okay.
no. In fact, there was a select board meeting, I don't know the dates, but there was a select board meeting where Mr. Butler was asked to come and give an update of sorts. It wasn't advertised as a hearing. It was a presentation to the select board. But it wasn't joint with Public Works Planning Board or Capital Planning.
September
Committee. So
20th.
September 20th?
Yeah.
And it was about seemed a long presentation, at least 90 minutes. I mean, there was a question and, there was a lot of back and forth. But so that's even more confounding because, I would just say the Public Works Planning Board, at least in good faith, tried to have a public hearing. And I think that's a very good thing. And Capital's totally willing to work, jointly to carry that out. And they thought this would be a great topic. And now it's just unclear where we are with this.
So I think that we should request that the process goes back before the Public Works Planning Board in an open process where the citizens in town have ability to comment and find out what's going on.
Who's the current chair?
It's Mr. Boland, of Public Works Planning Board. It's Mr. Boland.
How often does that board reorganize?
So we have had only, so since I joined the board, I have been appointed, we've had only the one meeting in July. And it my opinion, there should have been a separate meeting first before joint meeting with Capitol, where they should have taken care of annual election. If they have somebody, secretary or other positions, but they haven't had that. So that's also been difficult because, while I support, having public hearings, this would be with the capital planning. I think there should be an annual election on every committee, actually. And in fact, on that note, I did confirm with town clerk that most committees are following that. It's just a good practice. I don't think it's in our bylaws, but it's good practice to have an annual election before.
Yeah, because I think even Shopsy, I'm pretty sure. I don't have all meeting minutes memorized, but I'm pretty sure Shopsy has at least voted to reappoint, reorganize, elect chair, vice chair, et cetera.
Yeah, this is difficult because there's been so few meetings. I honestly don't know when the last election was. And
Debbie, was it Mr. Bolin who presented at the select board meeting? Or Mr. Butler?
No, Mr. Butler. In fact, yeah, the two committees were not asked to attend.
Sorry, the Public Works Planning Board currently is Mr. Stivers, Mr. Boland, yourself.
Mark Bernazzi and Jim Harding. And I think Mr. Harding couldn't make it, so I haven't met him yet.
I'm sorry for my confusion, but Mr. Butler is involved in what capacity? Just as a concerned citizen?
So my understanding is he did some work on the Ashland water and has a good sense of, could take a look at this. As you might remember, I don't know what the actual ask was, but our water consultant from PAR is also the consultant for Hopkinton, which might have been a very good move for Hopkinton, but I think that there was concern that he's working for Hopkinton. So Southborough needed somebody, to evaluate. And my impression was for Mr. Butler to do, he would be doing the first line of defense, and I think that is what he presented when he met back with the select board. I wish it was back to the committee, where which has taken it up. But his recommendation, among a lot of things, because it was quite a long presentation, is that there should be, I think, an engineer, a peer review. Yeah. So
Well, I'd
that's where
just
it's
like
at.
to say, I think that appointing Mr. Muria to the board is one of the best things we've done in a while. So thank you for your service on that board.
Thank you. So we can write a letter to the select board.
So Mr. Butler wasn't in a role, he volunteered to do the research to provide a presentation.
It's unclear how he got
There.
involved. And he may do a fabulous job and has a lot of knowledge on that, but it should be an open process.
I just didn't know if he was a chair of the board.
Well, I make the recommendation, I did see some correspondence between the chair of capital planning and public works planning board. It looked like they were trying to arrange another hearing. And were also uncertain of Mr. Butler's role. And I made the recommendation that why doesn't Mr. Butler come to the public hearing? But that didn't happen. He went to the select board instead.
All right,
It's on the list.
on the list. The next item, discussion planning board meeting schedule.
So Holly put together this anticipated planning board schedule for 2023. It's very similar to last year's. We try to avoid school vacations, holidays, significant events like Super Bowl, religious holidays like Rosh Hashanah. We do have one meeting in September scheduled on the 25th, which is Yom Kippur.
We should change that.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty important.
Yeah.
So we could not have that meeting because we have a meeting 2 weeks before that and 2 weeks after that.
Oh, really? One.
Oh, I suppose it could be moved to October 2nd.
Yeah.
So move September 25th to October 2nd.
And I can tell you that I already have a conflict for January 9th. I'll be on vacation.
So.
January, yeah,
Zoom with your umbrella drink.
Not a chance.
Are you Bernadette?
Just as long as we don't have multiple conflicts that day.
No, I'll be here.
Was it June? What was it?
It was January 9th.
January 2nd or January 9th?
January 9th.
We'll still have a quorum.
and we'll just give you a Mullins form with the information.
That'll be my first time missing a meeting.
Physically.
So,
Mr. Mills,
I'm just kidding. Get a little
Planning board is
punchy
good?
and late. I'm
Looks
still
good.
suffering from.
Let me just put it this way, we'll drive.
And then we have one set of meetings after the planners. So, do you want me to do the planners report?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just add something? Just noticed that the Huffington Water topic is on the select board for tomorrow in executive session.
Session, okay.
Very good observation. Thank you for.
Well, I have a little help from a text.
Okay, planners report. We received the updated National Grid Vegetation Management Plan that had the changes in it that were agreed to at the joint meeting with the select board and the planning board, and Mark Purple executed it and provided us a copy. So that's a good step. I've asked the open space monitoring consultant to provide us a quick presentation on the fiscal year 22 report. Usually ends up around this time frame. They are available for November 7th. If you'd like us to put that on the agenda for the 7th. Mimi had invited Shopsy to a joint meeting with the planning board on November 7th to discuss MBTA communities, to start getting the ball rolling on that.
I had a question about that. So maybe I should be asking Mr. Hagerty. In a joint meeting, I count towards both quorums, or do I only count toward one board's quorums? One board's quorum. Anybody know off the top of your head?
That's a
All right.
perplexing
I just want
question.
to, I'll check and make sure, I'll check with Dorian tomorrow and make sure that I'm not needed for a quorum on Shopsy. Or worst case scenario, you can spare me for the night.
So
Okay.
it's just an informal discussion to get things
Right,
started.
I just want to make sure the
see-
Shopsy is a quorum.
Yeah, to
Okay.
see where we are
So-
and, you know.
Worst case
depending
scenario,
on
I
where
would
we
just
should
step
go.
off of the planning board or for that agenda item. Okay, sorry, thank you.
See, I'm
On that same note, Colleen sent an email to Dorian about some complete streets grants that are available to assist with the town working and getting things going, because we need a consultant to help do what's needed for the next January 24th deadline. So Colleen's working on that. She talked to Dorian today. Like I said, Colleen's kind of spearheading that a little bit, so we'll see what comes of that.
And as far as I can tell, the new, so we sent comments to the state, and the new guidelines were not helpful to us at all. Except for they do allow 10%, I think, of affordable housing.
Okay. Yep, that was a, then also, there was an article in my Southborough regarding town pursuing heavy truck exclusion on Flag Street, so I put that in the planners report, if you hadn't seen that article. So you can look back there, and it gives a good synopsis of what's happening with those. Quick update on the special town meeting. I'm sorry, unfortunate, and maybe you probably have more information, but the tree protection bylaw failed to pass town vote. However, the planning board report recommending it was filed with the town clerk today, so that even though it's not required because it's a general bylaw, but we're following the process as if it's a zoning amendment. There should be no question if it does come back within 2 years, because the report in support of it. And for Miney Scenic Road initiative, that was indefinitely postponed. And we also submitted the planning board report to town meeting. The planning board supported it, town clerk, so on record. So if there's ever any question, can we proceed? But
Yeah.
that one didn't fail. I think we just.
And I wanted to apologize to the board for not getting this across the finish line. I know they've been working on it a long time.
No need.
Don't
And,
apologize.
You do wonderful work. Thank you.
Those questions, the questions that were coming through were.
Very hard to anticipate.
Yeah.
and hopefully, hopefully, the board will agree to bring it back.
I would.
It would be great to have a discussion on that maybe for the agenda for November 7th, because I think the policies that we discussed need to start to be drafted, and maybe we can discuss what next steps are for both.
Okay, and as you say that, we need to accept, the planning board needs to accept the outdoor rules and regulations for outdoor illumination, the outdoor illumination rules and regs from when that bylaw passed. There was a section on enforcement that we were working out with Marty. Marty was working out with Marty Healy at the select board at the time. So maybe if we can get that going on November 7th or November 21st, to just send that out to everybody. You can look at it and we can see if you just want to accept it that way, because you can change it again.
Right, because it's a policy, right?
But right now, it's still
Just to
draft.
go to the board.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Draft. So it can always be tweaked later, but if we get something on record, we'll have that to hand. I've been handing the draft out to you. Then the other thing is the downtown district design guidelines. That's in the same, that's in the same boat, because we have a couple interested parties that are in the downtown district now to change the use of some of those buildings and or add to the use. And I have the draft guidelines, which is what I'm going by. But once, and again, those can be tweaked, but we need to accept those. So if I can get those out to you guys for November 7th, we can get those on the agenda. And at least get those accepted, and then if you want to change them, or anyone has an issue, we can at least tweak. Okay, just get them going now.
Just back to Article 1, maybe you did a great job with the tough questions. You stay very composed, you represented the board very well.
Second.
Just want to make sure.
It was a tough crowd.
It was a very tough
Was it?
crowd. And you stayed very composed and didn't get flustered.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're sorry, Mimi, that it didn't pass. I think the intent and obviously what our goal is to protect our public shade trees. And I think it unfortunately gets really misconstrued around drip lines and private property and septic systems. So I don't know what it means, but you did a really great job. You're very composed, and I second Mr. Mills' compliment. It's a rare thing.
is good.
But every time we get stronger.
Yeah.
we go through that, and eventually just keep hammering away. Tweaking it.
So I make a motion, we approve the minutes from September 12th, 2022 as written.
Second.
Make a motion in a second. Any discussion? Latrell abstain.
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Mary, yes.
She did another really good job.
Make a motion, we accept the minutes from September 26th.
No, we don't have those, yet.
Oh.
That's it. For tonight, I have the backlog on. We had a little transition from Kate Fellows to getting a new reporting clerk, so it takes a little time to get those out of the queue.
We're still in good shape.
Yeah. We'll have a bunch at the next meeting.
So next meeting, November 2nd, November 21st, December 12th. Oh, heavens, December.
November 7th, right? Is that what you said? She didn't say second.
Well, she read all three of
Oh,
them.
okay.
November 7th.
Oh, yeah, I just heard second. I'm like, okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, Latrell, yes.
Mills, yes.
Stein, yes.
Houlihan, yes.
Mary, yes.
Here we go. Jesse got you out of here by 10 o'clock.
You gonna bang your gavel?
Oh. Planning board is adjourned.
Own it, Mimi.